keep it organized. It's really big. So let me make this a little bigger. So this paper here, Global, Regional, and National Burden of Gastroesophageal Reflux Disease 19, the GBD 2019 study. Okay. Got one paragraph in here. Let's find it. Okay, typical GERD symptoms include heartburn, right? Heartburn where it burns in your chest, right? And acid reflux. This is what most people think of it. Okay, we're going to show there's a lot more to it. Histological changes in the esophageal mucosa, that's the skin of the inside of your non-erosive reflux disease. So it's not degenerating, it's not eating it away. Reflux esophagitis, inflammation of your esophagus, and Barrett's esophagus. That's real bad. That's like alcoholic. That's like the tears in the esophagus. It's bad. GERD can also cause a variety of extra esophageal, so that means outside of the esophagus, manifestations including, listen to this, asthma, cough, sore throat, throat clearing, and unexplained chest pain. Acid reflux, or GERD, can cause asthma, cough, sore throat, throat clearing, and unexplained chest pain. Does it sound like something bigger than just stomach acid, doesn't it? And when we see how all these things connect to toxic bile, you start to understand this. So those of you who are like constantly, maybe you or a friend, you're one of those, and you're like, no, I don't have heartburn. This is okay. This is the thing you have to get through your head. You don't have to have heartburn to be having bile coming all the way up and causing you all sorts of problems. Asthma, cough, sore throat, throat clearing, unexplained chest pain. Those are called silent reflux. If you don't have acid reflux symptoms, these things, these are toxic bile in your esophagus, in your throat, even in your mouth. Okay? Due to its recurrent and troublesome symptoms and complications, for example, esophageal inflammation, stricture, that's tightening up, ulceration, eating holes, perforation, punching full holes, metaplasia, we're getting into cancers here now, and esophageal adenocarcinoma. GERD seriously lowers patient health-related quality of life. That's a lot of things connected to just a stomach acid problem. Oh, one of the other things I want to hit on. Your stomach is designed for stomach acid. There is nothing else in your body that is as designed to handle stomach acid as your stomach. So why would we ever think that it is stomach acid causing ulcers when your stomach is designed for that? Right? I want you to just keep that in mind. Now, your stomach is not designed. Now your esophagus is not designed for stomach acid, right? It's supposed to stay in your stomach. But your stomach is not designed for bile, and neither is your esophagus. So once bile goes anywhere, it starts causing all sorts of problems. So let's move on. Silent reflux. What you should know about it. Here we go. Let me make this a little bigger in a sec. Oh, wait, not that one. This one. So they have a new name for it. Medicine always needs new names for everything, right? Silent reflux, also known as laryngo, so your larynx up here in your throat. Laryngopharyngeal, so your pharynx, your larynx and your pharynx. Reflux doesn't cause any symptoms. However, complications can include long-term throat irritation, scarring, ulcers, and increased risk for certain cancers. So they're saying there's no symptoms. So again, everybody out there who's, I don't have heartburn, stop it. If you've got the constant throat clearing, if you've got the constant mucus, if you've got the asthma, if you've got the cough, you have stuff coming up your throat. And that doctors are like, we can't find any reason for it. Well, they call like silent liver disease because doctors are terrible at finding it. Silent reflux is called silent because they're terrible at finding it. That's what they name it. When they're just terrible at their jobs, they call it silent. So let's go over the common symptoms of laryngopharyngeal reflux. Okay. A bitter taste in your throat. Gosh, what's bitter? What do we talk about here all the time that's bitter? Oh, it's bile. A sore throat or a burning sensation in your throat. Difficulty swallowing. Hoarseness. Frequently feeling the need to clear your throat. Chronic postnasal drip or feeling like you have drainage dripping from your nose into your throat. Asthma. Common symptoms of GERD, heartburn, nausea, vomiting, or regurgitation. Well, we know what that is. That's bile. Difficulty swallowing. Hey, do you know what we're going to go over in just about a second? Do you know what bile does to muscular tissues? It paralyzes them. It makes them not work well. Swallowing is a concert of muscles having to do their jobs in sync. They have to do it in a certain pattern so that you can swallow. We're going to talk a lot about the lower esophageal sphincter. So think of the esophagus comes down. There's a valve there. Your lower esophageal sphincter at the bottom of the esophagus. It's a sphincter. It's a valve. I mean, it's a sphincter, so it tightens up and it closes. Okay, it has to tighten to close. It has to muscular action tighten to close, and that's what keeps things in your stomach and keeps them from going back up. So imagine if you had a muscle that had to close, but it became paralyzed. What position is it probably going to become paralyzed in? Open. If you have your stomach with stomach acid and bile in your stomach, and you have bile continually paralyzing your lower esophageal sphincter, and for those of you who have had gastroparesis, where your stomach is actually paralyzed, it's all bile. It's all bile. We're going to show that. So, dry, painful cough, bad breath, chest pain. So here's a funny thing that I was thinking about. You know how when people get sick, they get a cold or they get the flu? And we say here that it is a massive, prolonged bile dump. Why do people get sore throats when they get sick now? Are you understanding how this happens? So this is all related to the same cause. They may show up as different symptoms slightly, because what makes the changes in this? Well, you're different. So your bile is toxic. There's the bile acids. There's the toxic metals in it. There's the fat soluble toxins in it. The forever chemicals. The Teflon. Whatever you've had come into your system. There's the copper. There's all these things in your toxic bile. The recipe of your toxic bile can change the symptoms that you experience. So the recipe of the toxic bile, and we're going to go over different recipes. They show in here that there's different recipes of the bile that's in people's stomach that makes things better or worse. They only talk about bile acids, but we talk about all the other toxic stuff that's in it. So then there's that. And then there's the amount of bile. So just more bile would be more of a problem. There's the nutrient deficiencies that somebody has. There's genetics. There's stress. There's all sorts of things that can get into this pattern. So you go, well, why does my dad have heartburn and I don't? Because you're different. These different things show up in different ways in different people because of the grand recipe of things. If you want to believe you're a unique snowflake, then believe you're a unique snowflake. And that's why you don't get the same things as somebody else. Okay? Now, well, this kind of makes it obvious. Gastroesophageal reflux disease and dental erosion. The role of bile acids. Well, how would bile acids get into your mouth? Well, there's two ways, actually. One would be coming right up from your throat. The next would be it gets into your bloodstream, which is what we talk about all the time here, and then your body turns blood into saliva, and then it comes in your saliva. So your teeth could be having straight up bile coming from your stomach up, or you could be putting it in there. Bile acids. What do they do to teeth? What does bile do to teeth? Probably wonderful things, right? Dental erosion was more prevalent in GERD patients than in controls, 27% versus 7%. Now, here's the recipe thing. In the GERD presence, the amount of glycocholic acid was greater in patients with dental erosion. So there was more dental erosion in the GERD people than the normal people. And then the people who had GERD, the ones with more dental erosion, had more glycocholic acid. Do you see the recipe thing now? We're just going to start on the recipe. So let's keep going. I gotta keep this moving because, man, we got a lot of stuff to go over today. Management of bile reflux. This is going to be great. So for those who make a big deal about, acid reflux or bile reflux, hold on. I'm going to take a drink of my Naya Soda Black, thanks to Kelsey. Got to get about half this down here. Make sure I don't have charcoal on my face. Okay, I'm probably not going to flush today because I already did a niacin flush this morning already. I want you to pay attention. This is an MD who is an expert in bile reflux. Okay, the question: what is bile reflux and how common is this condition? So when the material produced by the pancreas, so I want you to, and the pancreas and the liver gets into the duodenum. Yeah, I'll just say it that way today. Duodenum, duodenum, don't care. So your liver dumps bile into the common bile duct. There is a pancreatic bile duct or pancreatic duct that goes to the common bile duct. So your liver pushes the bile, the pancreas pushes its fluid into there, and then that goes into the small intestine. Okay, that's when they mean duodenal fluid. Okay, so then the small intestine is adding more things to it. So you've got the duodenal, altogether the duodenal fluid, liver secretion, bile, gallbladder contents, bile, and pancreatic secretion form a solution in the duodenum that contains bile, but also many other components. When this solution gets into the stomach and then up into the esophagus, the patient experiences so-called bile reflux. However, a more appropriate name they're going to be like, we're going to get really specific now. However, a more appropriate name for this condition is duodenal gastroesophageal reflux because it more accurately describes the components of the material. Now, that's true. Okay. So now I want you to think about this. The recipe of what's coming up into your stomach. Now they're talking about what the intestine adds, what the pancreas adds, the bile. Do you see how different people, depending upon that recipe, could have very, very different symptoms? Because certain things cause problems and certain things don't. You have more of one thing, less of another. So let's keep going. Oh, let's just go over this real quick. Bile reflux is very infrequent in healthy individuals. The condition is more severe in patients with GERD, particularly those with severe esophagitis and or Barrett esophagus. So here's a mind-blowing statement. Healthier people have less bile in their stomach. The sicker people get, the more bile they have in their stomach. Amazing. This is the key thing here. How is bile reflux distinguished from acidic reflux? Read that again. How is bile reflux distinguished from acidic reflux? It is not possible to distinguish bile reflux from acidic reflux in terms of signs and symptoms because they look exactly the same. Those are his words. Therefore, it is difficult to distinguish acidic reflux from bile reflux. Okay, so why are we even bothering it? So they can't distinguish the symptoms. I'm saying the cause is the same. It's just the recipe of what goes up there is a little different, which is what he's kind of saying. Okay, so let me go find the next part. Okay. What are the most common treatment options for patients with bile reflux? The treatment for bile reflux is the same as the treatment for acidic reflux. In general, everything that can reduce acidic reflux can reduce bile reflux. Examples include lifestyle modification, weight reduction, and the avoidance of eating immediately before sleep or being in the supine position immediately after meals. Notice how he's not going to talk about the types of foods. In addition, smoking has been found to be a factor in the development of acidic reflux. Thus, all of these factors should be applied to bile reflux as well, because it's the same problem. But have you ever heard about bile in your stomach in regards to GERD or acid reflux or any of that stuff? You've never heard of it, I bet. Never, ever heard of it. You come here, you get to hear about it. And then you get to hear that the things that help the bile reflux also help the acidic reflux. How amazing is it? Hey, Dr. Smith, do you have a protocol for bile reflux versus acidic reflux? No, because it's the same problem. Let me see. Was that it? Oh, this is just another part of that quote. Likewise, drugs that reduce the secretion of gastric acid, proton pump inhibitors, or that reduce gastric contents or volume can be used to treat acidic bile reflux. Okay, great. Since treatment for bile reflux is the same as treatment for acidic reflux, why is it important to determine whether reflux contains bile? I'm going to tell you it's not important. It has been shown that patients with more bile reflux have more severe esophageal mucosal damage. Well, that makes sense. So there is a clear correlation between the amount of bile reflux and the severity of distal, that's the further down, esophageal inflammation. In fact, patients with the most severe degree of gastroesophageal inflammation, Barrett's esophagus, are those with the largest amount of bile reflux. Thus, the importance of bile reflux has to do primarily with the severity of the damage to the esophageal mucosa, the development of Barrett mucosa, and potentially the risk of cancer. So they have to scare you into cancer, into like getting cancer treatments, right? It is known that the more bile reflux a patient has, the higher the risk of Barrett esophagus development, both in vivo, so in cellular studies, and this is in real people, and in cellular studies, in vitro. Studies have shown a link between bile that is in contact with esophageal mucosa and changes in the mucosa that are compatible with Barrett's esophagus. However, there is no need for patients with bile reflux to undergo special monitoring or take any prophylactic measures apart from the treatment of gastroesophageal reflux disease, unless they already have Barrett's esophagus. Even in this case, endoscopic surveillance is controversial if the Barrett mucosa shows no sign of dysplasia. This is one of those things. So what I was taught in medical school, and I use this, it's funny, I went to naturopathic medical school, and I took the philosophy part very seriously. The docere, the doctor as teacher. I'm trying to teach you guys. You know, the first do no harm. I take that more seriously than just about anybody I know. Like all these things, and one of the things they taught me in school was they said, if the results of a test you're thinking of running, if whatever the results are, positive or negative, are not going to change your approach, like if you have already decided this is the approach I'm going to do, and you run a test that whatever the answer of the test is, you're going to do the same thing. Don't run the test. Don't waste your money. Don't make the patient have more anxiety about another test result that's out of range. If the test results are not going to change your treatment, no matter what they come back as, do not run the test. That's something I was taught. That's something I do. So he's really saying here, it doesn't matter if it's, you can test for bile reflux, but is it going to change the treatment? I mean, all they're going to do is they're going to be like, wow, you're in deep doo-doo. You're in deeper doo-doo than we thought. But for me, what would my treatment be? It's going to be the same because it's the same problem. It doesn't change what the problem is. So let's see. Let me find if there's anything else in this big old document. Nope, we're good. Okay. Here's a hypothesis paper. How might esophagitis, inflammation of the esophagus, what would cause that? Oh, I don't know. Bile, acid, a paralyzed lower esophageal sphincter from bile, allowing both of those things to bubble up. Well, I couldn't highlight this, but let's see. Where was it? I think it's on the second page. No, So they're saying here, evidence favoring a pull hypothesis as a cause of hiatus hernia. So they're saying, do longitudinal contractions in the esophagus. I keep seeing esophagus. Do longitudinal, so that's the long way, going up and down. Do longitudinal contractions in the esophagus pull the cardia up, like pull the where your diaphragm is, basically. Just think of your diaphragm going over your stomach, kind of laying over your stomach. That's what they're talking about, okay? Normal esophageal peristalsis, that's movement of it, results in longitudinal muscle contraction. This may not be restricted to contraction of the outer longitudinal muscle layer alone. I think it was here. The fact that longitudinal esophageal contraction occurs in every peristaltic event is indicated by the radiographic, so that's like X-ray, observation of markers placed on the esophagus by the records from strain gauges and by ultrasonography. Let me just simplify this. They're saying that there's a lot of muscle contractions going on. Your esophagus is a tube of muscle. Okay. If herniation of the cardia, that means like hiatal hernia, into the hiatus, right? Hiatal hernia does not occur when healthy people swallow. What mechanisms prevent this from happening given the apparent magnitude, the strength of longitudinal shortening in the mid portion of the esophagus and the considerable strength of the esophageal longitudinal muscle layers? One possible explanation is that the neuromuscular function of the region, how well the brain and the nervous system are making it work between the longitudinally contraction mid-esophagus and the lower esophageal sphincter region, serves to neutralize the axial upward force. Okay, so what they're saying there, they're saying, why doesn't everybody get a hiatal hernia? Because the muscle contractions are trying to pull that up. What is keeping it down? Well, your other muscles are keeping it down. Okay, so for those of you who have had hiatal hernias, what I'm about to go into, here we go. So they're saying that there's the normal muscle contractions in a healthy person who doesn't have a hiatal hernia are keeping the esophagus and the cardia, that part, down. It's not breaking up through, which the hiatal hernia, I'm not going to explain hiatal hernias right now. Why doesn't that happen to everybody? Because the muscle contractions happen to everybody that would pull it up. But why is it not staying down? Okay. Let me just go back to this fun paper done by the Rockefeller Institute, 1906, I think. Studies on the toxicity of bile, part 2. But this was by the Rockefeller Institute, yes. And let's go down here and find, okay. To sum up briefly, it may be said that bile, according to the present almost universally accepted view, contains a toxic element which is capable of producing nervous depression. That doesn't just mean you feeling sad. That means the whole nervous system is like down-regulated. Coma and paralysis, but does not contain any element which can produce excitation and convulsions. Don't worry about that last part. Coma and paralysis. What do you think if your lower esophageal sphincter and all those muscles that are supposed to keep your stomach down are sort of paralyzed or comatose or just not functioning right? What happens? Well, the sphincter opens up and the muscles let your stomach start coming up because every time you swallow, your esophagus is yanking up on it, and then you get a hiatal hernia. Okay? So now let's do a fun one. Let's look at the foods we suggest not to eat, and then let's look at heartburn foods. So let's get back up here to the top. Let me make this a little bigger. I don't think this is showing my highlights. Let's see if it's going to do it. Maybe not. What food should you avoid with acid reflux? Let's go look. Oh, this is one thing now. So if you guys want to do something to help with your reflux. I mean, how much you eat and when you eat, like eating right before bed and putting a big old meal in your stomach right before bed, that's not good. Generally, eating right before you go to sleep is not great for you at all. But the position of your body after eating, this is where they keep trying to do anything other, most of the time, they try to do anything other than telling you that it's what you eat. So the position of your body after eating, the amount of food you eat during a single meal, yeah, the more you eat, the more it's going to be bad. And the type of foods you eat. So this is Healthline, so they're going to talk about these foods. Okay, what do we not eat an excess of on the Love Your Liver program, folks? How do you cause liver problems and gallbladder problems and toxic bile leakage problems? There's 3 dietary methods in the research that they use to create cholestasis, which is toxic leaky bile. They either do a high-fat diet or a high fructose diet or a low-protein diet. High-fat meals and fried foods will aggravate GERD. Shocking. What would they trigger a big dumping of? Bile. Okay, that makes sense. Spicy foods. Spicy foods, just so you know, folks, capsaicin, spicy peppers, that's biological warfare. Like, it's not anti-inflammatory at all. There's no hormesis nonsense, pharma cartel garbage, brain screw. Stop. Capsaicin and spicy foods are not good for you at all. They stimulate adrenaline and cortisol, and that's why you get addicted to them, is because you're addicted to the adrenaline fix. Okay? They are not anti-inflammatory. They are pro-inflammatory. This is why cops will spray people with pepper spray, and you don't see them all hugging and being happy after they do that, because it's painful. So, 2017 Korean study found that hot, spicy stews led to GERD symptoms in more than half of the assessed cases. So, fruits and vegetables, let's go over these. I didn't get to highlight that one. Anyway, pineapple. I know a lot of people out there, if you're going to eat pineapple, I mean, pineapple is very high sugar. Pineapple, if you get the white stuff, it's going to have less vitamin A in it. But I mean, the yellow pineapple, it's yellow. It's got plenty of vitamin A in it. It's got plenty of carotenoids. And white pineapple, here's the funny thing. I believe that nature, in terms of fruits, will put more sugar in plants more when there is more vitamin A to cover up the flavor, so that animals will actually eat it. White pineapple is nowhere near as sweet as yellow pineapple, which seems to bolster my concept. Okay, but citrus fruits is not the acidity, it's that citrus fruits contain citraldehyde. Citraldehyde, or citral, inhibits ALDH, aldehyde dehydrogenase. Inhibiting ALDH messes with your bile production. Tomatoes, super high in vitamin A. Super high. Oh, the other thing, spicy foods. Peppers are extremely high in vitamin A. So here we have vitamin A food. High fat causes you to absorb more vitamin A into your liver. We've got fruits and vegetables. We've got potentially a high vitamin A food. Potentially, oranges are very high in vitamin A. And then you've got citraldehyde, which messes with your bile. We got another high vitamin A food. And then we got good old garlic and onions. Garlic and onions are extremely high in sulfur, and sulfur slows down your ALDH. Beverages. Alcohol, coffee and tea, carbonated beverages, citrus and tomato juices. Gosh, these are not things that we tend to drink on the program. Folks, I've tried the whole carbonated drinks thing, like carbonated water, the Soda Stream, or buying, the mineral waters with the carbonation. I don't feel good on carbonation. I don't think it's that great for people. So, let's go over other things that we don't do on this program. Chocolate, full of copper and cadmium and polyphenols and stuff we don't want. Polyphenols slow down ALDH. Mint, yeah, mint has been shown sometimes to relax the lower esophageal sphincter in people. So even though people will take peppermint for some stomach issues, it can actually aggravate heartburn. Heavily processed foods, well, those aren't good for anybody. Antibiotics damage your liver. Aspirin damage your liver. Bisphosphonates damage your liver. Alpha blockers, nitrates. Calcium channel blockers, just a bunch of drugs. Iron or potassium supplements. I'm going to say this right now. Some of you may be sensitive to potassium chloride. Potassium chloride, which is something that we have as an option on the program. Some people's stomachs don't handle potassium chloride at all. It's just the way it is. I don't know why. I tolerate it fine. Other people do it and they're like, I can't take it. And okay, don't. It's not that hard. But yeah, they're mainly, like, when they talk about potassium supplements, they're really talking about potassium chloride, because that's what pharma puts into giant tablets that are slow release of potassium. And but potassium chloride is great. We use it all the time in 50/50 salt. That's about it. But yeah, so you look at all the drugs, chocolate, mint, heavily processed foods. So these are the foods that aggravate stuff. Okay, so that's just one of these tabs. Let's go into oh, wait. So that's kind of connecting it to toxic bile theory and what we already do. And you could see on that food list that people avoiding the foods in that food list, that's what we do in the Love Your Liver program. And then we see improvements. And this is also why I don't have to have a protocol for GERD. So now, did I do that last link, Joe? I think I did. Okay. Okay, here's this link. Bile. So now we get into, okay, so one of the things that fits into toxic bile theory, I used to call it bile to biome theory. Your toxic bile, when it goes into your gut, will tend to destroy some of the gut biome that are not bile tolerant, as they call it in the literature. And then others that are bile tolerant will grow more. And then those commonly will make what are called secondary bile acids. Secondary bile acids are the worst bile acids. So then we get in, then those are reabsorbed through the enterohepatic circulation. A standard American diet person would reabsorb 95% of the bile they make that day. It goes right back to the liver, and then it can be pooped out. L6AS, I did a post on pork today on Twitter. Pork liver is commonly the highest vitamin A liver that's found. I've shown before that lard factor is a synonym for vitamin A in the fat of pigs. Just because the USDA doesn't test for anything other than retinol does not mean there are not retinaldehyde and retinoic acid in crazy amounts in pork. If you eat pork, good luck. It's not in the program. So bile reflux alters the profile of the gastric mucosa microbiota. This is where you get into like chicken or the egg. The toxic bile changes the gut biome. The gut biome makes the bile more toxic. That goes up to the liver. The liver's damaged from the toxic bile. Now that it's even more toxic that it has to process. It puts it back into the bile. You got extra toxic bile going down, making the biome worse, making more toxic bile. It's all in circulation. So, they both affect each other. That's the key thing. Bile reflux can cause inflammation, gastric mucosa atrophy. Atrophy with muscles is a very bad thing. And diseases such as stomach cancer. Alkaline bile flowing back into the stomach affects the intragastric environment and can alter the gastric bacterial community. So we're just talking about pH here. Because your stomach is acidic and bile is generally regarded as alkaline. I know we call it bile acids, but the bile overall, it's kind of like the whole lemon thing where it's acidic, but the overall mineral content and all that stuff, it's alkaline. So let me see if there's anything else on this one. So we're just showing that the microbiome, this is what this browser window is about. There was a marked difference in the microbiota structure between patients with and without bile reflux. So there's a difference in the gut bacteria, in the stomach bacteria. Now, on to this one. Gastroesophageal reflux disease and probiotics, a systematic review. We have a whole section on probiotics in the program, talking about putrefactive, talking about fermentative, talking about using sun fiber, which can help both sides of it, doing what helps and not doing what doesn't. That's a crazy concept out there. Let's just go over this part. One article reported on 2 probiotic groups. Thus, 14 comparisons were included in selected studies, of which 11, 79% reported positive benefits of probiotics on symptoms of GERD. If you've ever taken probiotics and you felt terrible after it, they changed your bile. If you've ever taken probiotics and you felt amazing after it, it changed your bile. It changed the recipe of the bile. And also, some probiotics have ALDH in them, aldehyde dehydrogenase, which means they can break down aldehydes, which are super toxic. And just so happens, retinaldehyde, vitamin A has an aldehyde. Okay. 5 out of 11 positive outcomes noted benefits on reflux symptoms. 3 noted reduced regurgitation. Improvements in reflux or heartburn were seen in one study. 5 or 45% of them saw improvements in dyspepsia symptoms, and 9, 81% saw improvements in other upper gastrointestinal symptoms such as nausea, 3 studies, abdominal pain, 5 studies, and gas-related symptoms, 4 studies, such as belching, gurgling, and burping. In conclusion, probiotic use can be beneficial for GERD symptoms such as regurgitation and heartburn. Okay, I'm going to blow my nose real quick. Which probiotic, Dr. Smith? I talk about that in the program. That's not just, I don't just throw that around. That's not, this program is deeper than just do this. Like, you might take a probiotic of one of the types I suggest and you go, oh gosh, I didn't feel good on that. And I would look at you and go, okay, try, it actually says in the articles to then try the other one. Don't keep hammering on that one just because it was the first one you tried. If you don't feel good on it, you could also take a break and then retry it just to confirm that that's what it was. Was it that probiotic that caused the problem, or was it because you ate your aunt's stew that had something in it that you shouldn't have eaten? Okay. Another one, prophylactic use of a probiotic in the prevention of colic, regurgitation, and functional constipation, a randomized clinical trial. So this is in babies. But colic and regurgitation, boy, that would be really similar to reflux in an adult, wouldn't it? Oh, I didn't switch over. Let me go back and show the, there it is. There's the title. Infantile colic, gastroesophageal reflux, and constipation are the most common functional gastrointestinal disorders that lead to a referral to a pediatrician during the first 6 months of life and are often responsible for hospitalization, feeding changes, use of drugs, parental anxiety, and loss of parental working days with relevant social consequences. So it's happening to kids. Remember, folks, if you were born with jaundice, you were born with a toxic, leaky bile liver. That's why you were jaundiced. Your mom was probably very toxic. You were probably born toxic and deficient. We hand these things down to our children. Forgive yourself first. That's the first thing. But then realize that your kid has been toxic, or realize that you've been toxic, and the only thing that's going to get you better, going and yelling at your mom is not going to help you. The Love Your Liver program will help you. Working with me or Nathan or Hope or Kelsey in the future will help you. But forgiving will help you. Blaming won't. What happened, happened. Okay. So let's get into this. Prophylactic use of L-Reuteri DSM 17938 during the first 3 months of life reduced the onset of functional gastrointestinal disorders and reduced private and public costs for the management of this condition. So they were just testing out. Now, here's the thing. If you want to go and try to find this, it's got to be this exact thing. You can't just go and say, well, I'm going to go take a Lactobacillus reuteri. That's not how it works. These things are very specific. But I'm just showing you this. All I'm showing you this is that probiotics and your gut biome affect your bile. That's what I'm showing you with this. Okay? So if you get your probiotics right, which is one of the earliest steps in what I call the order of adding stuff in the program, getting your gut biome helped and better is one of the first ways you can make your bile less toxic. That's why I go over this first in these toxic bile theory presentations. Okay? So now, let me share this one. Okay, so now we're getting into aldehydes. Aldehydes and reflux. So one of the things people hear me talk a lot about on these live streams is aldehyde dehydrogenase, which I believe is the most important, the most critical detox enzyme pathway in your body. Aldehydes are a huge part of your health problems. And what we try to do is, okay, key concept here. We do not try to speed up aldehyde dehydrogenase. This would be like your car has the emergency brake on and you don't take it off and you just try to drive with it and you're going, well, I want to go faster. Let's just push the gas pedal down harder and you burn out your engine faster. So going and taking, what's that, Asian pear or whatever to try to speed up your ALDH, it's going to end badly. We've already seen it. We've already tried all this stuff. You don't need to go and experiment. We've already tried all of it. What we are trying to do, so like your car, it's not driving as fast as you want because the emergency brake is on. We're going to take the emergency brake off. Then your car drives like it's supposed to. We don't try to put a turbocharger on your car because you go to the mechanic and you say, it's not driving as fast as it should. And the mechanic kind of looks at your emergency brake and it's on. And he goes, well, maybe they're just going to ignore that. That's like doctors. They're like, well, the emergency brake is on. Well, we'll just ignore that. Let's put a turbocharger on your car. And then you just push the gas harder. And then you'll be able to get to the speed you used to be able to get to until your car completely breaks, which is what pharma does to you. Okay? So remember how we talked about silent reflux? We're talking about vocal cord leukoplakia. We're talking about dysplasia up in bad cells up in your throat. Okay? So polymorphisms, these are like genetic variations in your ALDH and ADH, okay? Severe dysplasia of vocal cord leukoplakia is more likely to occur in laryngeal carcinoma. We already saw how when there's more bile up in your stomach and your esophagus and your throat, then bigger problems happen, right? Alcohol dehydrogenase and acetaldehyde dehydrogenase are both important enzymes in alcohol metabolism. This study aimed to investigate the incidence rate of malignant transformation, so it turning from just abnormal tissue into cancerous tissue in patients with VCL and the role of drinking habits and ALDH2 and ADH1 genetic polymorphisms in the malignant transformation of VCL. I know you guys may not drink, but ALDH processes like all the aldehydes. I mean, there's aldehyde oxidase and other ones, but ALDH is the linchpin. It's the most important one. And yes, they're drinking, but that's how we get to see what ALDH does when it goes bad. So they looked at ALDH2 and ADH1B genotypes, so that's the genetics, and a gastroesophageal reflux. Therefore, among patients over 60 years old, wait, let's go through this. The older the person, the more time they've been around to accumulate toxins. Okay. And the slower their detox is going because they've got more toxins. This is one key point you must understand. The more toxic you are, the slower your detox goes. The more bottlenecks you have, probably the more nutrient deficiencies you have. You do not get to go and put a turbocharger on your detox because your detox sucks. Accept it, realize it. Don't go into this like pig-headed and stubborn and you're just going to push the gas until you get to where you're going. No, you'll probably accelerate around a corner and fall off and make yourself feel worse. This happens all the time. People don't listen to me. They think they're going to be the one who pushes through the program the fastest ever. And then they get their ass kicked by their own liver and their own bile. And then they go, oh yeah, you were right. And I go, I tried to warn you. So an ALDH2 inactivated mutation. So they got this. And then, so they got a slow ALDH. And excessive ethanol uses up your ALDH. And tobacco consumption. You people out there who are, oh my gosh, if you got sucked into the tobacco and nicotine nonsense, I'm sorry. Tobacco and nicotine is not going to save anybody. Are potential contributors to the malignant transformation of vocal cord leukoplakia. So it gets worse, right? Slow ALDH2 makes bile problems worse. Ethanol uses up the nutrients that run ALDH, and it just runs the enzyme, uses it up. Tobacco's just not good for you. Come on. Inhaling smoke of any type has never been good for you. Never. And then the older you are, the more toxic you are. And cancer is toxicity. Okay, so let's move on. Let me get this link for everybody. Endogenous. Endogenous means made from within the body. Endogenous aldehyde accumulation. There's that word again. Generates genotoxicity and exhaled biomarkers in esophageal adenocarcinoma. We're going to tie this to a couple things here. Volatile aldehydes, including retinaldehyde, are enriched in esophageal adenocarcinoma. Wait, another throat cancer. It's enriched in their breath and could improve early diagnosis. However, the mechanisms of their production are unknown. Here we show that weak aldehyde detoxification characterizes EAC, which is sufficient to cause endogenous aldehyde accumulation in vitro. Weak aldehyde detoxification means a slow ALDH. And when they're saying endogenous aldehyde accumulation in vitro, so it's a bottleneck, right? You're trying to put aldehydes through a slow ALDH and it's not making it fast enough, and so they're backing up. Okay. Accumulation. Weak. Let's do this. Weak detoxification results in accumulation. Somebody write that down. Okay. Now, oh wait, everybody, oh my gosh. The willing or unwilling pharma shills who are all about metformin. Metformin's going to save the day. The pharma cartels save us. No. Metformin, a putative aldehyde scavenger, reduces this toxicity. Metformin binds to aldehydes, makes them less toxic while they're in the system. So people think that metformin is like wonderful. No, metformin has all sorts of problems. If you want to take drugs, I mean, go take drugs. Don't be here. But do you see what they're saying it does here? It doesn't make the aldehydes go away. It goes and finds them and binds to them and makes them less toxic while they're in the system. This is why metformin solves no problem, because it doesn't address the root cause. It is addressing the symptom of aldehyde toxicity. Okay. Tissue and breath concentrations of the medium chain alkanol, decanol, these are all both aldehydes, AL, are correlated, and increased decanol is linked to reduced ALDH3A2 expression. Oh, slow aldehyde dehydrogenase, you get more aldehydes. Isn't that what we're saying? I think that's all in this one. One of the first things you can do to help your ALDH, it would be just like, so if you had a job and you had too much work coming your way and you wanted to catch up and you were getting agitated, anxious, maybe you were stressing yourself sick, what would be the first thing that, let's say, your boss could do to help alleviate the stress on you? I mean, you got a pile of jobs. The boss could stop sending you work. right? So you can look at your pile and it finally starts getting smaller and you feel like you're getting somewhere and you feel better and you're like, oh, I'm going to get there. I'm going to catch up. This would be like you putting less aldehydes in your cake hole, or things that turn into aldehydes like alcohol, like vitamin A. So the first thing, it is always more important to put less toxins in than to try to like force detox or take more nutrients. It's always more important to put less toxins in, because then that reduces your nutrient needs and it reduces the toxins in your system. Okay, so let's keep going. Deficient aldehyde dehydrogenase 2 is associated with increased risk for esophageal squamous cell carcinoma in the presence of gastric hypochlorhydria. This is low stomach acid. Wait, folks, stomach acid is acidic. What are we talking about that comes into the stomach that makes it, that's alkaline, that makes the stomach less acidic? Oh, that's bile. Wait, I say aldehyde dehydrogenase problems are connected to bile problems. Don't know what YouTube's going to do about this. I'm not going to say this because I just don't need to get, shadow banned or whatever. Deficient aldehyde dehydrogenase 2 is associated with an increased risk for esophageal squamous cell carcinoma. The local metabolism of carcinogenic acetaldehyde. If you are drinking alcohol, carcinogenic acetaldehyde in the upper gastrointestinal tract could be involved in the association. I did do this one, right? 205. Okay. This is an interesting thing. I didn't see this one. Since an anacidic stomach, I guess they're saying no, that means no acidity. I would think it'd be unacidic. That's a weird word. Since an anacidic stomach can promote bacteria-catalyzed local acetaldehyde production. Remember how I told you the gut biome can have ALDH or ADH, but they're saying here it can make it. The gastric acid level could also affect acetaldehyde metabolism. Let me see. Let's go down here. Microbial production of carcinogen acetaldehyde in the presence of gastric hypochlorhydria, low stomach acid, is most probably involved in the mechanism of ALDH2 related susceptibility to esophageal squamous cell carcinoma. Yeah, anacidic, Joe got me the definition here. It's a condition of an absence or low level of acid in the stomach. Okay. So thanks, Joe. Now, one of the other aldehydes that I like to look at, because they study this more, is malondialdehyde. Malondialdehyde is an aldehyde formed from the infamous PUFAs, especially the processed isolated vegetable oils. Okay, vegetable oils are bad for you because they're full of PUFAs, and fish oil is bad for you because it's full of PUFAs, and PUFAs oxidize, and this is one thing nobody talks about, when they oxidize, they turn into malondialdehyde. That's one of the biggest things they turn into. Malondialdehyde itself, I've shown this research before, malondialdehyde itself inhibits ALDH. Wouldn't that be like the perfect toxin to take in something that inhibits its own detox? That's bad. Okay. Oxidative damages are critical in the pathogenesis of reflux esophagitis, inflammation of the esophagus from reflux. Implication of antioxidants in its treatment. I don't care about that. Don't take antioxidants. Don't do what's in the Love Your Liver program. Otherwise, disregard the whole antioxidant theory of health. It's garbage. The facts that the severity of reflux esophagitis cannot be accurately predicted on the basis of acid exposure. Wait. So is reflux really acid caused? Wouldn't more acid cause more problems? Oh, maybe not. Maybe it's something else. The facts that the severity of reflux esophagitis cannot be accurately predicted on the basis of acid exposure. So it's not dose dependent on the acid. And acid suppression treatment is not enough for the complete healing. Suggested that other damaging factors might be involved in the pathogenesis, the creation of the disease of reflux esophagitis. So they suppress the acid. It doesn't fix it completely. And they can't tell you how bad your symptoms are based on the amount of acid in your stomach. Must be something else then. What they found, significantly increased amounts of malondialdehyde. Yeah, there's that. So that's the first one. That's what they found in the treated groups. So now let's go to the next one. So just reducing, getting rid of all those stupid added oils, the added fats that we add to our foods. Like added, I love when people are like, I don't eat processed foods. And I'm like, do you eat oils? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, maybe you missed the what processed foods are class. If they're like, I wouldn't eat sugar because it's processed from sugar cane. And you're like, but olive oil? Collagen protein? They're all, I mean, you have to get over it. Processed foods can be used, but you don't want to use them very much. You want to use them minimally. But you have to understand what a processed food is. Okay. Did I already go over this one? Was this the same one? In a duodenal model? No, this is a different one. Okay. So oxidative damage. Did I put this one up? Yes. 2, 4. Yeah. Okay. Oxidative damage in an experimentally induced gastric and gastroduodenal reflux model. So this is both. So there's got gastric reflux, which is supposedly the acidic one, right? And then they got gastroduodenal, which is the stuff with bile in it and the pancreatic fluids and all that stuff. What do we got? Mucosal. Oh, this is so again, the recipe. Think about the recipe here. Mucosal damage was greater in the mixed reflux group compared with the gastric reflux group. I told you bile plus acid is worse. The stomach is designed for acid. Malondialdehyde and carbonyl content in the serum, in the blood, and DNA damage in lymphocytes, white blood cells, were significantly increased in both reflux groups. At 9 and 12 months, oxidative damage was increased in the mixed reflux group compared with the acid reflux group. More bile, bigger problems. Mo bile, mo problems. Somebody write that down too. Anyway, I'm in a mood today. Okay. Again, serum malondialdehyde and carbonyl content, as well as lymphocyte DNA damage, were significantly increased in the setting of acid and mixed acid/bile reflux in these rodent models. Further, those serum and lymphocytic changes were associated with esophageal ulceration, eating holes, inflammation, and regeneration. Some of you may remember, what is it that's in bile that eats away at cells, layers of cells? Oh, vitamin A, retinoic acid. Retinoic acid is used on faces as chemical peels to dissolve the upper layers of cells. Gosh, what do you think you'd have if you had too much bile with retinoic acid in it constantly burping up against your stomach and your esophagus? Is your stomach designed for a chemical peel? No. Your stomach is designed for acid. It's not designed for bile, and it's not designed for a chemical peel. So, one more. The good news is, mo blood bile, mo problems. I don't know. We'll have to work on that one, Joe. We'll have to fix that one. Protective effect of ECQ on the rat reflux esophagitis model. So they're giving this. They're giving a quercetin compound on experimental reflux esophagitis. Quercetin slows down bile production. It is a bioflavonoid polyphenol. It slows down ALDH. Short term, it can slow down bile production. So now that you understand what reflux is all about, short term, could we see quercetin improve acid reflux? Yes. This is called the duration paradox effect. It's where something helps in the short term or in cell studies, and long term, it does the exact opposite. It makes things worse. It causes the problem. So they induced reflux esophagitis by a surgery. Nice. So in the reflux esophagitis, they saw significantly increased amounts of malondialdehyde. So again, it's just, so they surgically did it. And they still saw the increase in malondialdehyde. Oh, but wait, They saw more. Oh wait, and in addition, ECQ inhibited the acid output effectively in reflux esophagitis. You remember what I was saying earlier? They couldn't tell the difference between bile and acid esophagitis or reflux. So if it's inhibiting this acid output, what's it probably also inhibiting? Bile. That's exactly what I'm saying. So we got that. Let's keep moving. Let's see. So there's not a lot specifically on vitamin A. You guys know that that's my thing, my thing. But there wasn't a lot on this. What I'm going to tell you is we have research before showing that vitamin A slows down the production of bile. Think of it as when you slow down people might say, well, why does that cause reflux? It's slowing down the production of bile in the good direction. So if you block things from going the good direction, what direction are they left with? The bad direction. Your liver is going to make bile. It's going to push out bile. If you block it one way, just like if you blocked a river, the river's going to build up and it's going to go around the blockage. It's going to go different ways. The law of unintended consequences. You plug one hole and you push it into another hole, okay? So let me finish my floosh. Again, Kelsey's store link is down in the info below. If you want to get that, it's a real and Niacin Black is a really great prefab combination of charcoal and multiple mineral nicotinates. So nicotinic acid, flush niacin, but bound to minerals already. And she's got some other cool stuff in there. So yeah, it's great, especially if sometimes I'm cool with putting together my big, doing like my mad scientist with all my bags of powders and mixing my own flush. Sometimes I just want it to be simple. So that's what I really like her Niasoda combos for. Okay. So the effect of retinoic acid and deoxycholic acid. This is a secondary bile acid, the bad ones, on the differentiation of primary human esophageal keratinocytes. Esophagus again. The mechanism linking gastroduodenal reflux disease to intestinal metaplasia, this is like moving towards cancer, in the esophagus, as in Barrett's esophagus, has not been determined. Active conjugate metabolites of retinoic acid, in addition to bile acids, undergo an enterohepatic, this is gut to liver, that loop, circulation in bile. So there's bile acids and retinoic acid in bile. Retinoic acids and bile acids are candidate mediators of keratinocyte transdifferentiation in Barrett's esophagus. We studied the effects of retinoic acid on the differentiation. That's where cells start changing into other cells of primary human esophageal keratinocytes cultured in vitro. That's a cell study. Retinoic acid induces expression of a marker of intestinal differentiation, MUC2, in these cells. The ability of retinoic acid to induce MUC2 expression may be relevant to the pathogenesis, the disease creation of Barrett's esophagus. Chemical peel. Barrett's esophagus is where, like, especially in alcoholics, like the esophagus gets really weak, and you can like tear, if you vomit, you could like tear your esophagus and die. Okay. So wow, there's a connection. Now let's do this one. Retinoic acid induced glandular differentiation of the esophagus. So RA, I just wanted this RA, retinoic acid. Barrett's esophagus occurs when duodenogastro-esophageal reflux causes squamous epithelium tissue to become columnar epithelium tissue by an unknown mechanism. Gosh, do you think it's the stuff coming up from the intestines and the bile and the stomach into the esophagus? Maybe. I love how they just act so dumb. They're like, oh no, we don't know why. Like, it's something in the stuff that they're refluxing up, smart guys. The bile acid, lithocholic acid, competes for the retinoid X receptor retinoid binding site. Wait. Let's cover this really well right now. People say you have to have active vitamin A, as in retinoic acid, to live. It's essential. Because they'll say it binds to the retinoid X receptors or the retinoic acid receptors. Did they just tell you that a bile acid competes for the binding site? So other things can bind to the receptor and do the same thing. I've been over this. I think in one of my articles on my old website, I showed there were 7,500 different compounds that they knew were agonists. They could bind to, I forget if it was the RXR or the RAR. 7,500 things. And then they actually even showed that you didn't have to have anything to bind to it to make it active. If you try to use the RXR or the RAR as your justification for wanting to take vitamin A or saying that vitamin A is necessary, you're wrong. Because other things do it. Okay. Wait. So retinoic acid biosynthesis. So people were making more retinoic acid was increased in Barrett's esophagus compared with SE was what? I forgot what SE was. Squamous epithelium. Okay. So retinoic acid biosynthesis was increased in Barrett's esophagus compared with squamous epithelium. Lithocholic acid and all trans retinoic acid caused a synergistic increase in retinoic acid signaling. That means there's more retinoic acid around. This is how they lie to you. They use the word signaling or homeostasis or balancing or whatever. These are all toxicity lie words, okay? So lithocholic acid, which is also known lithocholic. Litho means stone. So they know that lithocholic acid tends to form stones. And all trans retinoic acid, this is the chemical peel. This is what they put on ladies' faces to dissolve their top layers of skin. This is what's often abbreviated as retinoic acid in studies. Caused a synergistic increase in retinoic acid signaling as shown by increased P21. Morphological and molecular analysis of SE, squamous epithelium, exposed to atra showed columnar differentiation independent of proliferation. That's what they're saying Barrett's esophagus is. It's turning into this columnar differentiation. They just told you that. So they're saying retinoic acid is part of what causes Barrett's esophagus and then cancer. Oh, look at this. Citral treated Barrett's esophagus led to phenotypic and immunohistochemical characteristics of squamous epithelium, which was independent of proliferation. So they're treating this with an aldehyde, which does what? Citraldehyde also inhibits ALDH. So that you can shut down detox and see things go backwards. Oh, wait, I just put this together. I'm sorry. Retinoic acid is the end product. Okay, so let me help you understand this. ALDH, right here, this is the enzyme. So we're aldehydes go through ALDH to turn into acids, generally. Okay, so retinaldehyde goes through ALDH to turn into retinoic acid. You following me? I'm going to tell you that citral is citraldehyde, and I can show you research that citraldehyde slows down ALDH. They gave citral. The aldehydes are not going through the enzyme much anymore. They're slowing down. You're building up aldehydes like retinaldehyde, but you're not doing retinoic acid. And then they saw the cells go back to normal. Isn't this fun? It all makes sense. And then I just wanted to read this one. This is a bit on the delusion side of people wanting to believe that Accutane is good for them in spite of it ruining their lives. And reflux. So what's the title? Could Accutane caused my uncontrollable acid reflux? I've been on Accutane on February 2006, finished on October 2006, so 8 months to ruin his life. I started out with the uncommon side effects, which were gastrointestinal, like nausea, bile in the stomach, primary, bloatings, bile in the stomach, Abdominal cramps, your stomach's not happy, heartburn, etc. They occurred during the beginning of treatment and in the middle when my dose was increased. My derm said it's uncommon to experience this, but it's okay as long as it isn't severe. Well, you know, your derm is just an Accutane pusher, so, you know, you should definitely believe them. Anyways, 3 weeks after beginning Accutane, I started getting weird throat symptoms that would last 1 to 2 weeks and then pass and then recur. And this went on for a few months and they passed. I thought it might be Accutane related, but I didn't mention it to my derm and I couldn't find anything online. At the last month of my treatment, the throat problem came back and this time would not go away. After 3 months, I went to an ENT and I had a very red and swollen larynx. Laryngopharyngeal reflux. He said I have acid reflux, although I had no stomach symptoms or heartburn whatsoever. Okay, so you see this, folks? But I discovered I had laryngopharyngeal reflux, where 80% of people have no heartburn at all, but only throat symptoms. And I had been on daily meds since then. And they only help like 50 to 60%, but not more. And I've been to numerous docs and tests, and I can't resolve my symptoms. I've been so depressed AF. This is the delusion. Anyways, I don't want to blame Accutane. There are so many people here probably in the live chat right now and in the comments after this. Accutane ruins lives. If you are a parent and you are thinking of giving your child Accutane, you should stop and have them do the Love Your Liver program so you don't ruin their health until they figure out to do the Love Your Liver program. Okay? We fix broken Accutane people. Sometimes it can take a long, long time. I read about Accutane and there was never a case like this alone. Nobody ever developed any reflux disease. No, they just never talked about it on the internet. I still don't believe that people have gotten hurt by Accutane. Surely they may have gotten some bad diseases during or after the course, but I think it was just coincidence like me. But what do you guys say? My mom keeps blaming the Accutane. Well, your mom's right. I'm 21 years old, male, great health, otherwise in good shape, and alcohol, cigarettes, and drug-free and acne-free, not to mention. Oh, well, he doesn't have acne. He doesn't have acne, at least. So, moving on. Okay, so I couldn't find anything on copper. I could not find anything on manganese. We do have a fun one on glyphosate, though. Glyphosate, for those of you who do not know, is Roundup. It's the weed killer. It was originally designed and patented as a industrial boiler chelating agent. So it grabbed onto the mineral deposits in industrial boilers. So that's how it dries out plants. It sucks out the minerals and the water follows the minerals and it dries out the plant. It was also patented as a biocide. And if you don't know the derivation of the word biocide, that means something that kills life. I've been over those patents before. A biocide, that just kills life. So glyphosate. One of the things glyphosate does in vitamin A toxicity is glyphosate slows down a certain cytochrome P450 system that takes worse retinoic acids and makes them into less damaging retinoic acids. Okay. So you're keeping, when you've got glyphosate coming in because you don't eat organic, you're getting more glyphosate. You are slowing down whatever retinoic acid you still have in your system. You're still detoxing from whatever. When it turns into retinoic acid, because it's going to, it will be worse forms of retinoic acid that will do more damage rather than less bad because of the glyphosate. So the original program, my original Love Your Liver program, used to be called the Vitamin A and Glyphosate Detox. That's how important I think this is. So if you're out there poo-pooing organic stuff, you bought into the pharma cartel propaganda and they just want you to eat. They want you to eat the garbage. Okay? So let's look. This is a fish, but for those of you who don't understand, they're not going to do these studies on people because they don't want it. They don't want that evidence out there. The highlights of the paper: exposure to glyphosate led to higher intestinal accumulation in the grass carp. So they were exposed to glyphosate and they started accumulating more. The more toxic you are, the slower your detox. The more you accumulate toxins, the more toxic you become, the slower you detox. Are you seeing the loop? Tissue injury in liver and gut and disturbed lipid metabolism, fat metabolism, like, oh, I don't know, cholesterol, which is a detox molecule, were observed. Glyphosate declined biosynthesis of bile acids in the liver by interfering with related genes. When you do this, you cause liver injury. It's going to blow out the back at some point. Gut microbiota dysbiosis disrupted bile acid circulation and induced gut liver damage. Gosh, isn't this like toxic bile theory in a nutshell? Glyphosate does it all. Enterohepatic gut to liver axis dysregulation might contributed to lipid metabolism disorder. Well, they might need to work on their English a little. Here we investigated bioaccumulation, metabolism disorders, and mechanisms in grass carp after exposure to glyphosate. Higher accumulation of glyphosate and its major metabolite, aminomethylphosphonic acid, in the gut was detected. Intestinal inflammation, barrier damage, and hepatic steatosis, fatty liver, were caused by glyphosate exposure. Lipid metabolism disorder was confirmed by the decreased triglyceride, increased total cholesterol, and lipoproteins in serum, and decreased visceral fat. Metabolomics analysis, that's where we look at all sorts of different compounds, found that glyphosate exposure significantly inhibited bile acids biosynthesis in liver with decreased total bile acids content, which was further supported by significant downregulations of cytochrome P450, 27A1, cytochrome 8B1, and FXR. This is the receptor that tells you to make more bile or less bile. Moreover, the dysbiosis of gut microbiota contributed to the inflammation in the liver and gut by increasing lipopolysaccharide, also known as endotoxin, as well as to the declined bile acid circulation by reducing secondary bile acids. Well, that's a minor little positive in all of that. They reduced secondary bile acids because they reduced bile production. Okay, that's not a good thing. These results indicated that exposure to environmental levels of glyphosate generated higher bioaccumulation in the gut, where it evoked enterohepatic injury, intestinal microbiota dysbiosis, and disturbed homeostasis of bile acids metabolism. Then the functional dysregulation of the gut to liver axis possibly resulted in ultimate lipid metabolism disorder. These findings highlight the metabolism health risks of glyphosate exposure to fish in the aquatic environment. So there's that. And glyphosate plays into vitamin A toxicity, absolutely. So let's go here. Now we're going to get into the nutrients. Okay, zinc and gastrointestinal disease. What does zinc not help with? That's really the question. This is a review. Zinc enhancement of gastrointestinal epithelial barrier function may figure prominently in its potential therapeutic action in several gastrointestinal diseases. I don't think I have anything else on this one. Nope. Okay, so let's go to the next one. There's that. Okay, let me get up here. Zinc deficiency and therapeutic value of zinc supplementation in pediatric gastrointestinal diseases. So these are little kids, you wouldn't, how deficient could they be? Well, if your parents were deficient, you're deficient when you're born. You cannot come out of your mother better than she was. You come out of her with her toxins and her nutrient deficiencies because she cannot give you what she didn't have, but she's definitely going to give you what she has. And ladies, I'm not blaming you. This is just the way it works. Dads, if you're out there being toxic, you are damaging your sperm. You are damaging all your stuff. I mean, that's once the sperm leaves you, dads, you're part and it's done. I mean, in terms of making, creating the new baby. Okay. This is another review. Zinc supplementation appears to be beneficial in peptic ulcer disease or gastroesophageal reflux disease. These are pretty straightforward. Now, I'm going to go over zinc L-carnosine. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It's just a form of zinc. A review of zinc L-carnosine and its positive effects on oral mucositis taste disorders, and gastrointestinal disorders. Well, what could come up into your mouth that might cause your oral mucosa, the lining of your mouth, to get irritated? God, and if it erodes teeth and it causes you to cough and it can cause asthma, it's probably bile coming up into your mouth. But I'll do this after I go through these. Okay, zinc L-carnosine, ZNC, is also called polaprizinc, known as pepsin GI, is a chelated compound that contains L-carnosine and zinc. There are several studies that support zinc carnosine's benefits in restoring the gastric lining, healing other parts of the gastrointestinal tract, improving taste disorders, that's just zinc, improving GI disorders, and enhancing the skin. Zinc is huge in your skin, and the liver. Okay, well, that sounds pretty good. The research supports its use for gastric ulcers, approved in Japan. I don't know what that means by approved in Japan, but maybe they allow companies to make a claim for it. Okay, so let's go to the next one, and then we'll go over zinc L-carnosine a bit more. The role of zinc L-carnosine in the prevention and treatment of gastrointestinal mucosal disease in humans, a review. So I highlighted this. Zinc L-carnosine is a pharmaceutical compound. I thought that was an interesting thing to say because they sell it as a supplement. Its properties are mainly mediated by its higher affinity for damaged mucosa that permits the release of zinc locally by ligand exchange. So it's breaking apart. The carnosine is dissociating, and it's putting the zinc into the damaged tissue. It has been shown to promote repair of mucosal injury in human studies and has been widely used for the treatment of peptic ulcers, chemoradiotherapy-induced oral mucositis, and esophagitis. Gosh, what connects these three things? Peptic ulcers, oral mucositis, esophagitis. Think it's bile coming up there? I do. So let's just talk about zinc carnosine for a second. Some of you out there may be going, "Oh, well, I got heartburn, and Dr. Smith says I should take zinc, so I'm going to go out and take zinc carnosine." I'm going to tell you, zinc carnosine is expensive. Like a pill is like 8 milligrams. It's not a lot of zinc. I tried to use this with people to see if I could get it to raise their zinc levels. I thought it would probably be really good for that. It didn't work worth a crap. So kind of like, okay, so let's talk about this. We already got another example of this. Magnesium pills can help you poop, but they don't raise your levels very well. Okay. Zinc L-carnosine or pepsin GI can help potentially with GERD or heartburn or silent reflux or mucositis or that stuff. It can help with those things, but it doesn't raise zinc levels very well. So we have to understand that these things can have they can have totally different benefits. Okay. They may be good at one thing. Sorry. They may be good at one thing and not good at another. It's okay. Just if you start trying to, I've had people take tons of zinc carnosine and they still couldn't raise their levels. It's like zinc sulfate. Zinc sulfate is just the worst garbage zinc out there, but that's what all the studies are on. So there's zinc. Now we're going to go into niacin, which, okay, so before I go into this, when I talk about niacin, I'm going to be very clear here. I'm talking about nicotinic acid. I am not talking about nicotinamide. I am not talking about niacinamide. Throw your nicotinamide in the garbage. Throw your niacinamide in the garbage. If you think stuff is better than nicotinic acid at raising NAD, you're wrong. Nicotinic acid is the best one at raising NAD levels, and it is the least expensive. And it's got the most research on it. When we talk about niacin, we talk about flush niacin or nicotinic acid. We do not talk about anything else. It's not a vitamin, it's an amino acid. So let's go. Inhibition. So I want you to just look at, those of you who are in the Love Your Liver program, you'll recognize a lot here. Inhibition of esophageal carcinogenesis in corn-fed rats by riboflavin. We don't use that too much, but let's look at the rest of this list. Nicotinic acid, selenium, molybdenum, zinc, and magnesium. Wow, what a list. Do you think that's going to do good things? I do. The effect of individual vitamins and minerals on esophageal carcinogenesis was assessed by supplementing a diet based on corn that was marginally deficient in many micronutrients. The test diets were fed to weanling inbred BD9 rats for 45 days. They were then given 5 subcutaneous doses of N-nitrosomethylbenzylamine, MBN, over 2.5 weeks. That's how they gave them esophageal cancer. They gave them esophageal cancer by injecting a toxin. Cancer is toxicity. Don't think it's anything else. It's not your system's broken. It's your system's trying to deal with the toxicity. The diets were continued until termination 150 days later. At that time, all rats were still clinically normal. Marked reductions in the number of tumors and tumor-bearing rats were recorded in groups of rats given supplements of riboflavin, nicotinic acid, zinc, magnesium, selenium, and molybdenum. Various combinations of nutrients did not distinctly reduce the tumor yield further. However, tissue analyses suggest that individual supplements could enhance the status of other marginally deficient nutrients. When the experiment was repeated but was varied by commencing the supplements only well after the cessation of MBN exposure, inhibitory effects on tumorigenesis, or new tumors, was still exerted by most nutrients. We emphasize that these nutritional effects, along with the epidemiological evidence in humans, are relevant to early prevention. Also, the treatment of pre-malignant esophageal changes by high doses of these nutrients may be unwise. The merits of food supplementation schemes. Food supplementation schemes. Food supplementation schemes. Food fortification schemes. With like vitamin A and vitamin D in milks and nut milks and fortified flour and all that schemes. So how does all this play in? Well, I have a whole show on magnesium. You might want to go watch it. Zinc we need for so many things. Guess what? Guess what you need molybdenum to run? ALDH. Also an enzyme called aldehyde oxidase that helps process aldehydes. What do you need selenium for? Oh, selenium also helps run ALDH. Nicotinic acid turns into NAD. NAD is the gasoline to run what enzyme? Aldehyde dehydrogenase. Oh, I wonder why this and this and this would help. And then we use these a lot. This, whatever. Okay. Oh yeah, molybdenum helps with. Wait, was that a sulfur compound? Did I forget about that? No, I just. Yeah, sulfur. Molybdenum helps with sulfur detox. I didn't go over all the stuff, but so now we have pellagra associated with esophageal carcinoma and alcoholism. Wait, too many aldehydes? Nicotinic acid deficiency? Esophageal carcinoma. I think that's all I have in this. Oh wait, I wasn't showing that. Sorry. There we go. Yeah, pellagra. This is nicotinic acid deficiency, and alcoholism, which depletes everything and makes more aldehydes. Associated with esophageal carcinoma, cancer of the esophagus, which is the downstream thing of GERD, bile reflux. We've already been over that. Let me see if I had anything else on this one. Nope, just the title. Now the next paper, pathological effects of pellagra, nicotinic acid deficiency on the esophagus. Pathological effects of a deficiency of an amino acid that some people call B3, but specifically the nicotinic acid form on the esophagus. Well, this study determined the pathological effects of niacin/tryptophan deficiency on the esophagus. 9 patients with severe clinical pellagra and 31 age and sex-matched controls were assessed. All pellagrins, so the people with niacin deficiency, nicotinic acid deficiency, had an esophagitis varying from severe to mild. All of them. All of them. They are lacking NAD to run ALDH. And when you have ALDH problems, what do you get? You get bile problems. This is all connected. The esophagitis improved in 5 patients following 6 to 7 days of vitamin therapy. 6 to 7 days. So they were probably the mild ones. I'm guessing that those were the mild ones that were the 6 to 7 days. But they just got some more niacin, and it ran their ALDH, and it ran, what is it? I think Kelsey's shown me 200 or 400 other detox pathways that NAD is the gasoline for. So if you want to know how to use nicotinic acid and you want to know how to buffer it and you want to know how to use charcoal with it and all that stuff, those articles are in the Love Your Liver program written by Kelsey herself. And we are always thrilled to have her on the team. The niacin stuff has been a breakthrough for many, many people. So let's do this one. Okay. Nicotinic acid action on gastrointestinal smooth muscle. This would include your esophagus and your stomach. Now, do you remember how I said earlier, I showed that bile causes paralysis and even coma and nervous depression? It's reducing the nervous system's ability to do things. Does this make sense that it would retard the ability of muscles to contract correctly? That makes sense, right? So if we're saying bile and the other toxins shut things down, and nicotinic acid is necessary to give you NAD, which is the gasoline for your detox enzymes to run, what might it do here? Are we going to see the opposite effect? In the rat stomach strips, so they cut it into strips, nicotinic acid or sodium nicotinate induces concentration-dependent contractions. Niacin does the opposite of bile. Why do you think we use it in the program? Can niacin increase bile dumping? Yes. So you need to be careful with if you have acid reflux. So anything, I'm going to get to this later, but if you have acid reflux, if anything you do aggravates it, even if it's stuff we talk about here as being good, if anything you're doing aggravates it, stop doing it or do less. It's not going to magically get better. In segments of rat descending colon, sodium nicotinate induces concentration-dependent contractions. This is like the opposite of gastroparesis. Gastroparesis is your stomach's paralyzed. So we have nicotinic acid, flush niacin doing the exact opposite of bile. Let's go to the next one. I couldn't find anything on selenium. I couldn't find anything on molybdenum. I did find some stuff on magnesium. Here, let's do this. Okay. I love this. Low gut microbiota diversity and dietary magnesium intake are associated with the development of proton pump inhibitor. This is the antacid medications. Induced hypomagnesemia. Not enough magnesium in the blood. So, although PPIs are generally considered safe, you're going to see that they're not safe at all. About 13% of the users develop hypomagnesemia. This is low magnesium in the blood. By the time your magnesium is low in the blood, folks, you are super low. Super low. So they're saying a full like 6th or 7th. Well, you can round it up to 8th, but 1/8 of the people who take PPIs get super, super, super low levels. So they still think everybody in the normal range is okay. They're not. Everybody who comes to me basically is magnesium deficient, unless they've been doing topical magnesium already. So low dietary magnesium intake, independent of omeprazole, that's the PPI treatment, resulted in a 10-fold increase in formate levels. That's not good. That's formic acid. Together, these results imply that both omeprazole treatment and low dietary magnesium intake disturb the gut internal milieu, so the gut microbiome, and may pose a risk for the malabsorption of magnesium in the colon. I'm pretty sure it's just this causing the problems. Pretty sure. Pretty sure that's what's causing the malabsorption of magnesium. And then if people have a low dietary magnesium intake anyway, well, then they're going to just get more and more deficient. But if you take toxins, deplete nutrients, it's more important to not put the toxins in than it is to worry about shoving more and more nutrients in. It's just a priority order. It doesn't mean we don't put nutrients in, but it's a priority order. So what would be the priority with omeprazole? Stop taking it when you're able to. Okay. Next one on magnesium. Dietary magnesium, calcium to magnesium ratio, and risk of reflux esophagitis, Barrett's esophagitis, and esophageal adenocarcinoma, a population-based case control study. Did this one right? Yep. In conclusion, dietary magnesium intakes were inversely associated with reflux esophagitis and Barrett's esophagitis risk in this Irish population. Hold on. Let me look at this. Yeah. This makes, for some reason my brain farted there for a second. So a higher magnesium intake, less reflux. Less magnesium, more reflux. That's what inversely means. Okay, so they're saying low magnesium intakes, more reflux, more esophagitis, more Barrett's esophagus risk. And how do you raise your systemic levels of magnesium the best? Topical magnesium. I have an entire live stream on it. I make an amazing lotion. Those of you who out there who have tried it, you know it's probably going to be one of the greatest things I ever make. It's great. So that 2 pumps of that a day will pretty much take care of your magnesium needs and give you a really nice lotion to use. Okay, so now let's get into this. Potassium. There's a new drug out there for reflux. What does it do? You guys have heard me talk about this a lot. Potassium competitive acid blockers and GERD. So what does medicine do? They shut down things. So what are they going to do? They're going to shut down potassium channels. This is not something you want to do. Why do these drugs cause problems? Potassium competitive acid blockers, on the other hand, are active when absorbed. Although they too accumulate. You're accumulating a pharma cartel toxin in you. They accumulate in parietal cell secretory canaliculi. Say that 5 times fast. They act by blocking the potassium channel of the proton pump. Though reversible, ionic bonding of both active and inactive proton pumps. It's just blocking stuff. That's what they do. Blocking potassium channels is a very bad idea long term. Now let's go into the drugs. Let's go into the proton pump inhibitors, the omeprazole, the Pepcid AC, all that stuff. How good are these for you? I don't know if you're on them. Okay, if you're on them, I understand you're dealing with it. Like you're not well. You've got a bile problem. You did the best you can. Or maybe you were kind of lazy about it, and you're like, I'm not going to change my diet. I'm not going to change my lifestyle. I'm not going to do jack squat. I just want to pop a pill. If that's the way you want to live your life, fine. It's probably not going to last as long as you would like. And when you get to the end, usually all people just want is more time. So anyway, proton pump. So if we're going to fix it, if you want to fix it, we're the people. And if you've taken proton pump inhibitors, omeprazole, Pepcid AC, any of the other prazoles, yeah, they're hurting your liver. Look at this, though. This is the gaslighting. Proton pump inhibitors are one of the most widely prescribed medications in the world, and for a long time, they were regarded as one of the safest medications. Recent studies have linked them with numerous adverse effects like dementia, interstitial nephritis, that's kidney disease, bone fractures, Clostridium difficile infection, pneumonia, etc. However, acute liver injury is not one of them. Let me tell you, all of those diseases that they're causing are exactly linked to liver injury. Drug-induced liver injury is one of the most common causes of acute hepatitis in the United States. That's liver inflammation. I did a whole episode on hepatitis if you want to go see how it's connected to toxicity. Majority of studies, what? Let me get the link. Sorry if this is the wrong link. There we go. Majority of the studies have not documented association of PPIs with liver injury. However, a few cases of PPI-induced liver injury with minor elevation of liver enzymes which normalized after discontinuation of PPI have been documented. So they're happening. Omeprazole and pantoprazole are the main culprits among the PPIs, but there are a few cases associated with esomeprazole as well. To our knowledge, this is the first case of biopsy-proven acute liver injury caused by esomeprazole. Drug-induced liver injury may cause serious liver failure, which warrants early diagnosis and treatment, including referral to liver transplantation. Our case provides a convincing evidence that esomeprazole linked to acute liver injury. Once thought to be one of the safest and most prescribed group of medications, is it time to add one more adverse effect on their extensive list of adverse effects? Obviously, yes. Have you guys seen, I saw a commercial on TV. They're selling birth control over the counter now. Like it's OTC. They want to poison everybody so bad. You can just go to Walgreens and buy your birth control over the counter. Poison yourself for the rest of your life. Neat. So a couple more of these. If you didn't know, proton pump inhibitors are bad for you. They're bad. What are they? I love this. Biliary tract. This is the bile duct tract, the bile canals, if you will. Association between proton pump inhibitor use and biliary tract cancer risk. A Swedish population-based cohort study. In this study, long-term use of PPIs was associated with an increased risk of gallbladder, intrahepatic inside the liver, and extrahepatic outside the liver bile duct cancer compared with the general population. If you didn't know, bile duct cancer is one of the bad ones, one of the fast ones. You don't want that. So let's go find another one. Adverse effects of proton pump inhibitors, evidence and plausibility. Do we think it's a strong enough connection to actually blame the pharma cartel for making people sick? Do our lawyers agree with this? I don't know. Where's my, let me see what I highlighted in this one. If I did, pretty sure I did. No, just another review. Yeah, look at this is the gaslighting. It is uncertain whether the associations between PPI use and potential side effects are causal. Okay. However, important evidence from experimental and mechanistic studies that could support a causal relationship may have been underestimated by epidemiologists and meta-analysis. Why would they do that? Oh, probably because they work for the pharma cartel. That's why. Scientists, if they want to keep their jobs, they have to find what they're supposed to find, Oh, using proton pump inhibitors increases the risk of hepatoliver, biliary bile duct, pancreatic pancreas cancer. A systematic review and meta-analysis. More and more studies are focusing on the adverse effects and damage caused by PPI abuse. It's not just abuse, it's just the nature of them. Come on. Was there anything else here? The use of PPI may be associated with an increased risk of hepatobiliary pancreatic cancer. Hence, caution is needed when using PPIs among patients with a high risk of hepatobiliary pancreatic cancer. If you mess with bile, so the PPI, people who have GERD, acid reflux, heartburn, silent reflux, you've already got bile going the wrong way. What PPIs are going to do is they're going to somehow shut that down. And eventually the pressure builds and it blows out the back and you have it leaking everywhere. And then your liver and your bile ducts and your pancreas are all trying to grab onto these toxins you're spilling out. They're creating new storage tissue called cancer to hold all this toxicity that you were not getting rid of because you took a drug to mask a symptom. And in the background, everything was just festering and getting worse and worse and worse. Same thing, you guys who are taking hormone therapies. It's the same thing. Guys on TRT, ladies on HRT, you're taking the hormones because your liver is damaged. That's the whole root of it. Your liver's already overloaded. It's not doing its job well. And now you're taking hormones from the outside and adding more jobs for the liver to do. Hormones are a lot of load on the liver to process. Why do you think steroids make guys' livers go bad? Hormones are hard to process. So any of these meds that you're taking, hormones that you're taking, it is adding a load to an already overloaded liver. And this is why these problems come about. Okay, so that's that one. Oh, and I wanted to throw this one in here. There's a couple things I want to go over with this one. Protective effect of lactoferrin on acute acid reflux induced esophageal mucosal damage. Notice that they say acute. I want to be very straightforward here. They're saying what lactoferrin does is it can help heal the bile ducts. It can help increase your ALDH in a good way. It can help increase bile production. But these things, lactoferrin, let me just say this so you guys have it very, very clear. Lactoferrin, if you have heartburn, if you've had heartburn, or especially if you have it right now, and you start taking lactoferrin, it is going to aggravate your reflux. It is going to aggravate your reflux. You must fix the reflux problem before you start taking lactoferrin, or you're going to cause yourself a bad time. This doesn't mean lactoferrin's bad. It means lactoferrin really, really increases your bile production. You've already got bile going the wrong way up into your stomach. You know, if the bile's leaking into your blood, I mean, yeah, you can have symptoms, but when it goes right into your stomach, you feel it right away. Like you have a symptom right away. It doesn't feel good. Fix the heartburn, the reflux, before you take lactoferrin. I know I'm showing a study here that says it's good to fix the acute, like short-term damage. Long-term stuff, it's not the same. Okay? How many people out there will tell you, don't take my supplement if you have this, or until this is gone? How many people out there say that? I mean, I got to point that out. Like, I will tell you, start super slow on lactoferrin and don't take it if you've got heartburn and these other things, because I want you to get better and not aggravate things. So here we go. But long-term lactoferrin is great. Some people do amazing on lactoferrin. I just know that heartburn people, it just goes right to making more bile, and it goes the wrong way up into your stomach and esophagus, and you don't feel good. Okay? Esophageal damage was attenuated or reduced by lactoferrin in a dose-dependent manner, as reflected by the improvement in the esophageal tissue weight and macroscopic scores. Significant reductions in the histological scores, myeloperoxidase activity, and the levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and interleukin-1 beta were also observed following lactoferrin administration. Conclusions: we concluded that lactoferrin exerts a protective effect against acute acid reflux-induced esophageal damage in rats. So it was acute. It was short-term. Okay. Now, I think I got one more window of tabs to go through. Yeah. Let me close that. So I'm going to try to run through these quick. You know me, and quick. This is kind of a smorgasbord of studies here. So let's just run through this. For anybody who doubts that, you know, GERD reflux is based in bile, just remember, if you're still making that, we're going to go over this, but if you're still making enough acid that the bile mixes with it, and so it's still acidic, that causes more problems because now you got the toxic bile plus more acid. If the bile being alkaline overpowers the acidity of your stomach, then you've just got bile. They're both bad, but the bile and the acid is worse. So we're going to go over that. So bile acid concentrations in the gastric, that's stomach juice of patients with erosive eating away esophagitis, inflammation of the esophagus, right? Gastric juice pH was less than, I can't see that, 3.5 in 7 patients. So that's pretty acidic, less than 3.5. In 7 patients when intragastric bile acid concentrations were greater than 200, is that micromole? I don't know seeing MU. It's usually either a U or the M. Anyway, MU mole, I don't know what that is. So they're saying here, what they're specifically noting is that you can have low pH acidic even when the bile in the stomach is really high. That's why they're making that comment. Okay? So you can have both. Let's keep going. Effects of bile acids on pancreatic ductal bicarbonate secretion in guinea pig. Okay. Dylan asked if a super chat. Thank you, Dylan. Dylan said, if lactoferrin heals bile ducts, isn't it better to just push through even if you have reflux? We have seen multiple people do that. They suffer for a long time, and they wonder why it's not getting better. And I tell them, we don't know how. So when you dump bile, it is the bile that is eating the holes. Lactoferrin can increase bile production, but it can also help heal the damage. But different people at different times, depending upon the toxicity of your bile, if you're getting more of the toxic bile eating holes and causing esophagitis and other stuff, then that's what you're dealing with. If you get over the toxicity of the bile to where you can start healing it more, then you can get there. But if you try to push through it, this is the thing. This is my warning. I warn people, Doc, it hurts when I do this. Well, then don't do that. Lactoferrin would kind of be up there for a lot of people in the black belt of supplements for this process. If you are a white belt and you walk into the dojo and you challenge the black belt to a fight, you're probably going to get your ass handed to you because you're not ready yet. Pushing through it would be like the white belt continuing to get up and continuing to get knocked down and continuing to get up and continuing to get knocked down and trying to get better that way. It's going to take a very, very long time, and there's going to be a lot of suffering. So you can try to push through it. We have no idea of how long. So when you say push through and then you go, well, how long am I going to have to push through? And I go, 6 months, a year? I don't know. 2 years? You want to have heartburn even worse for 2 more years? I wouldn't. I'd rather just do it slow and figure out what dose of lactoferrin, if any, is tolerable and doesn't make anything worse. We do not push through here. That is not something we do. Pushing through means that somebody is ignoring the signs that their body's saying, this is too much right now. This is not the time for this. So there's that. Effect of bile acids on the pancreatic ductal bicarbonate secretion in the guinea pig. Okay, so what does bile do to the pancreas's ability to alkalize the gut fluid? The bolus, the gut, the stuff that's in the gut. Oh, you're welcome, Dylan. Acute pancreatitis. So you guys know pancreatitis is bad. That's not a good thing. Is associated with significant morbidity. This is disease risk and mortality, death risk. Bile reflux into the pancreas is a common cause of acute pancreatitis. Wait, another thing where bile causes a disease specifically? And although the bile can reach both acinar and ductal cells, most research today has focused on the acinar cells. See, I knew I had more. Here we go. Inhibition of bicarbonate. So your body needs to make, after it goes out of your stomach, your body needs to turn what was in your stomach, alkaline. That's what it does. So it adds bicarbonate to it. Inhibition of bicarbonate secretion by high concentrations of bile acids may contribute to the progression of acute pancreatitis. So bile not only messes with your stomach acid production, but it messes with the bicarbonate production in your gut, especially if it refluxes up into your pancreas. So if you have history of pancreas issues, this is actually part of what I think diabetes is. So the liver's toxic. The liver's making toxic bile. And the bile is refluxing to the pancreas, and it's affecting the pancreas so it doesn't work as well. Bile reflux in the constellation of GERD. Gastric acid and bile acids are a particularly noxious combination when they interact with the mucosa of the upper intestinal tract. Worse together. There is a critical pH range between 3 and 6 in which bile acids exist in their soluble, dissolved, unionized form, can penetrate cell membranes and accumulate within mucosal cells. You can accumulate bile in tissues. At a lower pH, bile acids are precipitated. They go insoluble. They come out of solution. And at a higher pH, bile acids exist in their non-injurious ionized form. Experimental, clinical, and immunohistochemical studies show that acid and bile reflux are increased in patients who suffer from GERD. Acid and bile reflux are increased in patients who suffer from GERD, are the key factor in the pathogenesis, disease creation of Barrett's esophagus, and possibly are related to the development of esophageal adenocarcinoma. Let's just keep going. Let's just keep finding the hits. We just keep. I mean, I don't know how anybody's going to argue about this. Dylan was kind of saying there's so many studies to back this theory up. It really. I went through. We have a research spreadsheet of all the studies I have collected through all these live streams and through all my inner circles. And thank you very much to David Hagerston. You guys should all thank David for the hard work he does in putting together this research spreadsheet. I went through that spreadsheet today, and of the studies I collected, I think there was 68 references to reflux, and a lot of these studies were from that. So anyway, thanks, David. Wanted to say that. Role of the gastric refluxate in, did I get it? Yeah. In GERD, acid, weak acid, and bile. So wait, we've got acid and weak acid and bile. The role of acid, weak/non-acid, and bile in the genesis of esophageal mucosal damage and reflux symptoms is complex. They just want it to be straightforward. They don't want to use their brain. Acid combined with pepsin and unconjugated bile acids are critical to unconjugated bile acids. Well, there's conjugated ones that are problems too, are critical to the development of esophagitis and Barrett's esophagus. Acid alone may be the principal factor in determining the severity of the esophagitis. Okay. Weak acid or non-acid reflux does not cause esophageal damage or damage to adjacent organs such as the larynx or lungs. The primary cause of heartburn and regurgitation is acid reflux, but a minority of symptoms, 5 to 15%, can be triggered by weak acid or bile reflux. But remember, they can't tell the difference. So they're sitting here trying to tell you what's going on when the doctors are going, we can't really tell the difference between the two of them. So I think that was it. Yep. We'll just keep going. Share this one. Let me make that a little bigger. Oh, this is a fun one. So if you've had appendicitis, appendicitis is another bile leakage condition. Association between GERD and appendicitis, a population-based case control study. Appendicitis and gastroesophageal reflux disease are both prevalent diseases and might share similar pathological mechanisms. Well, if you're here right now, you understand what the pathological mechanism is. It's toxic bile. We concluded that patients with appendicitis had higher odds of prior GERD than those without appendicitis, regardless of age group. Okay. Let's keep going. So you're more at risk of appendicitis if you have GERD, which means you have toxic bile leaking. Oh, wait, here it is. Bile reflux and gastroparesis. What does bile do? It paralyzes. Comatose. It makes things turn off. Have we fixed gastroparesis? Have we helped people fix their gastroparesis before? Yes. Do we have a gastroparesis protocol? No. We do the same general principles on everything because all of these diseases are connected by the same pathway. Post-operative gastroparesis and bile reflux are among the more problematic complications of upper abdominal surgery. So imagine this. If they go and start cutting into your digestive system, is it probable that you're more likely to have leaks? So really what they're just showing here is when they're creating leaks, they're creating leaks in the system. So we know that. Okay, let's keep going. Let me see. I don't know why I got this one. I don't see my highlighting on this one. Let me see if I can bring it up. Let's go. Okay, dude, you might need to go. Sorry, I'm talking to my boy. Bile acids can be harmful in certain altered conditions like cholecystectomy, removal of the gallbladder, terminal ileal disease, that's your intestine, or resection, cholestasis, toxic leaky bile by definition, duodenogastric bile reflux, bile going back up into your stomach, duodenogastroesophageal bile reflux, and bile acid diarrhea. Bile acids can have malignant, cancerous potentials as well. Well, we just went over how they accumulate in the tissues. What is cancer? Toxicity accumulation. I wonder if I'll ever be able to, let's say, get a hold of a tumor that's been removed and analyze it for tissue bile acids, like a biopsy. That would be interesting, right? That would turn everything on its head. So, I want to show you ladies something. Ladies, I have bad news. People's livers really don't like estrogen. The liver has a really hard time with estrogen. And ladies in general make less bile, which means it's going to be tougher for them to eventually get rid of the toxicity. And ladies also more easily make more body fat. Where do we store a lot of fat-soluble toxins? In the body fat. Men tend to have a higher metabolic rate. That makes things run faster. So, ladies, you're a little bit behind the 8 ball just because of the way you're made. It just is what it is. Gastric hypochlorhydria, so low stomach acid, is associated with an exacerbation of getting worse of dyspeptic symptoms in female patients. The total symptom scores and the epigastric pain, that's the pain, at your stomach area or above where you think your stomach is. Epigastric pain-related symptom scores were significantly higher in female patients than in male patients. The dysmotility-related, things not moving right down your throat, and reflux-related symptom scores were also higher, but not significantly in female patients. Multiple regression analysis of age, gender, habitual drinking, smoking, H. pylori infection, and gastric acid secretion revealed that gender, as in the sex you were born with, and gastric hypochlorhydria, low stomach acid, were significantly associated with higher dyspeptic symptom scores. Wait, so they have less stomach acid, but they have more symptoms. Is it acid reflux? The total scores and the dysmotility-related scores were significantly higher in the patients with gastric hypochlorhydria than in those with gastric non-hypochlorhydria, and this difference was found to be present only in females. Well, imagine this. What alkaline thing coming up from the intestines and the liver could make the stomach less acidic? Bile. Analysis of the major bile acids in the saliva samples of patients with Barrett's esophagus using high-performance liquid chromatography, electrospray, ionization, mass spectrometry. Your constant clearing your throat, your nagging cough, your sore throat, it's bile coming up in your throat. Just because you don't have heartburn doesn't mean you don't have this happening. They got saliva from patients with Barrett's esophagus. Glycoquinodeoxycholic acid is a promising biomarker. That means if they look for this, they're thinking they can find this disease. PCA could distinguish the patients with the most severe Barrett's esophagus condition. So this is another bile acid. Let me go down here. So I want you to see when they do these studies, they only look for a couple of bile acids. There's like, as far as I found in the research, there's at least 56 different bile acids. So they looked for 3 of them, 3 major glycine conjugated bile acids in human saliva. Glycoquinodeoxycholic acid was significantly elevated in the patients. That's the ones who have GERD. And principal component of analysis of all bile acids could distinguish the most severe Barrett's esophagus patients. We also reported on the detection of glycoquinodeoxycholic acid in exhaled breath condensate for the first time. So there's bile acids in your exhalation. We went over earlier how there was there another bile acid or was another aldehyde? Another aldehyde was in your breath. For those of you who want to understand how important proper breathing is to your healing and your detox, I did a whole episode on breath and aldehydes and detox and all that stuff with I talked about Rome Zah's breathwork program. If you want to try that out, that's available. Most of us, our breathing sucks. And if you don't breathe right, you're getting rid of toxins in your breath. But if you don't breathe right, you actually store more toxins in your lungs and then you get lung problems. So I think that was all for this one. Yeah. So that was glycine conjugated. Now we're going to go into this. So I'm showing you the recipe. They're saying the recipe of the bile can distinguish how severe something is, how much of the glycoquinodeoxycholic acid was there. The more of it, the more severe it was. Increased levels of conjugated bile acids are associated with human bile reflux gastritis. I mean, really, how many papers have we gone over that nobody ever talks about bile with reflux? As a result, we found that the conjugated bile acids became prominent components in bile reflux juice, whereas almost equal amounts of conjugated and unconjugated bile acids existed in non-bile reflux and healthy juice. Not juice I want to drink. So more conjugated bile acids. Everybody thinks so. Let me just blow this out of the water. Everybody's like, bro, you got to take taurine because it conjugates bile acids. And bro, you got to take glycine because it conjugates bile acids. You got to take sulfate because it conjugates bile acids. More conjugated bile acids became more prominent in the ones who had bile reflux. All of the recipe is important. Just because it's conjugated or not conjugated, it might be better conjugated and worse unconjugated, or it might be better unconjugated and worse conjugated. Every single bile acid is different in terms of the recipe. It'd be just like looking in your, I don't know, we don't use spices much on the program, but if you're looking in your spice cabinet, you're like, well, just use the brown spice. And somebody's like, well, which one? Because if you use the wrong one, this is going to taste awful. Right? You can't just use the wrong one. You got to use the right one. So with bile acids, it's kind of like that. Just because it's conjugated or non-conjugated, this is why some people take taurine and they feel great, and some people take taurine and they feel awful. Some people take glycine, they feel great. Some people take glycine, they feel awful. Thus, increased levels of conjugated bile acids are associated with human bile reflux gastritis. Let us keep going. Toxic bile acids in gastroesophageal reflux disease, influence of gastric acidity. Let's see, do we have anything on this? There it is. Toxic secondary bile acids, the worst. But these are made down in your intestines. Okay, I want you to understand this. Secondary bile acids are made in your intestines. Toxic secondary bile acid fractions have been detected in patients with extensive mucosal damage. Mixed reflux, as in acidic and bile, is more harmful than acid reflux alone, with possible toxic synergism existing between the taurine conjugates and the acid. This is why I do not like anybody out there who thinks they're a liver expert. There's a dude on Twitter thinks he's Mr. Liver Guy, just giving everybody taurine and TUDCA and no. You gotta look at each person's response to these things. This is the magic of what we do. Like if you took taurine and you felt better, I'd be like, keep taking it. If you took taurine, you felt worse, and you're like, but the research says taurine is so good. I'd say stop taking it immediately. It's making you worse. Don't. Like just look at the simple stuff. Let's keep going. More cancer. Can bile acids be an etiological or causal factor for laryngeal cancer? Bile acids in reflux material accumulate in the laryngeal tissue in laryngeal carcinoma patients. Wait, that would be saying you've got more bile acids in cancer tissue again. Therefore, bile acids should be considered a carcinogenic factor in the etiology of laryngeal carcinoma because of their mutagenicity due to DNA breaking, as they cause chronic inflammation due to intracellular accumulation. Just wait until we do the methylene blue show. Kelsey and I, we've been working on it. And we show that methylene blue accumulates in cells. And people are like, no, it doesn't. And we're like, yeah, it's right here. It's right here in the research. Like accumulation. That's the magic word. Look for accumulation or accumulate. Let's keep going. Activation of NADPH oxidases leads to damage, DNA damage in esophageal cells. Let me get this one. Gastroesophageal reflux disease is the strongest known risk factor for esophageal adenocarcinoma. We know why now. In the center of tumorigenic, that's making tumors, caused by GERD, is the repeated damage of esophageal tissues by the refluxate, the reflux. In this study, we focused on a genotoxic, as in toxic to your DNA, aspect of exposure of esophageal cells to acidic bile reflux, the worst. Analyzing cells generated from patients with Barrett's esophagus and human esophageal specimens, we found that acidic bile reflux causes significant DNA damage that is mediated by reactive oxygen species. Taken together, our studies suggest that inhibition of reactive oxygen species induced by reflux can be a useful strategy for preventing DNA damage and decreasing the risk of tumorigenic transformation caused by GERD. But yet again, you'll never hear about bile in GERD. Next one. I'm trying to go through these fast. We're already at what, 2.5 hours? 2 hours and 20 minutes. We actually started on time today, though, so I get a gold star for that. Wait, bilirubin. Bile acids and total bilirubin detection in saliva of patients submitted to gastric surgery, and in particular to subtotal Billroth 2 resection. How would bilirubin get up into their saliva? Well, again, I told you there's two ways. One, it can come up here. These people are going for gastric surgery. They probably got reflux. So it can come up from here, and it can come from your blood. The saliva is made from the blood, and so it has the toxins in it. So let's see. Do we have anything here? There we go. We found detectable levels of bile acids and total bilirubin in saliva of patients submitted to previous gastric surgery. We already saw that, where they did the surgeries and then they saw more leakage and more problems with the bile. Prospecting an intriguing diagnostic role of this dosage in the study of biliary laryngopharyngeal reflux. We finally revealed a high incidence of laryngeal disorders in patients with positive bile acids in saliva. So your voice problems, your speaking problems, your constant clearing your throat, you got bile in your saliva. So imagine if you, let's say you weren't having reflux back up, but you just had tons of bile acids coming into your saliva from your bloodstream. And then you swallow that over your throat all day. That's another way to coat your throat with bile. We fix all of it the same way. I mean, generally the same ways. Everybody does their own version of what we do. Okay, let's go over this. Endoscopy in hyperemesis gravidarum and H. pylori infection. Hyperemesis gravidarum is excessive vomiting during pregnancy. I've shown the paper before where in conventional medicine, they now consider subclinical, so below their detection limits. They can't find it. It's silent. Subclinical intrahepatic cholestasis, toxic leaky bile in pregnancy to be a normal part of pregnancy. They consider toxic leaky bile to be a normal part of pregnancy. Now, that's how sick everybody is. So gosh, if you got a lot of bile, if let's say you were constantly refluxing bile up into your stomach, think your body would throw it up a lot? Yeah. What happens when you get a lot of bile in your stomach? What starts growing? Well, I'm going to tell you, like, all a woman's toxicity really starts to come out during pregnancy. This is why so many women feel like such hot garbage during pregnancy, and our grandmothers and great-grandmothers and great-great-grandmothers got through pregnancy pretty easy, and they would look at these younger generations and be like, it's not that big a deal. It is a bigger deal for the younger women because they're exposed to a lot more toxins when they were young, and all the shots and all of that stuff. So we suggest that patients with intractable nausea, bile, and vomiting, bile, during pregnancy, pan-gastritis, that's inflammation, like that's all of inflammation of like all of the stomach, and enterogastric, guts to stomach reflux are the main endoscopic findings, and that those findings are closely associated with H. pylori infection, which can be diagnosed histologically. The degree of gastric complaints may be associated with the density of H. pylori infection. The H. pylori is only there because the tissue is so nasty and damaged and toxic and deficient that it can continue to grow the H. pylori. Just like parasites, folks. Okay, where was it? Oh, this is an old paper. I wanted to go over this. Let me see. What was this paper? The question of bile regurgitation as a cause of gastric ulcer. When was this? 1971. The important part is not just, I can highlight it. The important part is not just the stomal ulcer, which is the result of an ulcerogenic ulcer-creating procedure, but the esophagus, which is opened, was normal histologically and also macroscopic. Wait, and that's not the one I wanted. No, this is the one I wanted. In this work, we have picked no quarrel with the stasis hypothesis. But our work does suggest that bile is an essential ingredient for upper alimentary, that's your digestive tract, inflammation and ulceration. So our questions then for the authors is as follows. Do we have to back one horse or the other, or can we put our money on both? These guys are saying, so there's the guys who say it's all stomach acid, right? It's hyperchlorhydria. Too much acid in your esophagus. And they're saying, we see that bile is an essential ingredient for this. And so why can't it be both? This is like where people can only think in one idea. They're like, it's either this or it's this. No, it can be both. And as we've gone over in the research now, the newer research, acid and bile are even worse. So it is both. Okay, here we go. Enterogastric reflux, mimicking gallbladder disease, detection, quantitation, and potential significance. So we already went over appendicitis, the connection. And now we get to go over the gallbladder connection. And if you had a toxic bile problem, you would tend to have more gallbladder problems. So, reflux of bile may damage the gastric mucosa, altering its function and cause such symptoms as epigastric pain, heartburn, nausea, intermittent vomiting, and abdominal fullness. These symptoms also are associated with gallbladder disease. What's the connection? So I just put your EGR index. That's enterogastric reflux index, because we talk about it down here. Patients with enterogastric reflux index greater than or equal to 24.5% showed a strong association with the pathophysiologic symptoms of syndrome of gastritis, alkaline reflux, gastric ulcer, and gastroesophageal reflux disease. So they have alkaline reflux. They got a lot of bile in there, and they got ulcers. Bile eats holes in things. That's what we got. Next one. But so gallbladder diseases are connected to it. Do you see how all these diseases are connected? Pancreatitis, gallbladder disease, appendicitis. So what do we got here? Enterogastric reflux, a hidden culprit in cases of suspected cholecystitis. This is inflammation of the gallbladder again. So imagine, let's say you have somebody with a gallbladder problem, and then they go in for surgery and they remove their gallbladder, and then they start getting acid reflux, because they started poking holes in their digestive system and making it not work as well. The other thing is that people who get the for the surgical weight loss, where they're doing surgery on their stomach, they get all sorts of reflux problems after that. You can't just go and do this stuff. Like it ends badly. Enterogastric reflux is the reflux of bile and other digestive fluids from the duodenum into the stomach. Enterogastric reflux exerts harmful effects on the gastric mucosa, facilitates H. pylori colonization. Reflux of bile facilitates H. pylori colonization. H. pylori didn't just set up in your stomach and start making you have ulcers. And it acts synergistically with H. pylori to cause gastritis and intestinal metaplasia. We're starting to head into cancer here. So they do these HIDA scans, and they look at the gallbladder ejection fraction. That's how well your gallbladder's squeezing. Enterogastric reflux was a reported incidental finding. They just found it on accident in 11% of reports. Gallbladder ejection fraction was assessed in 68 cases, 24 of which were abnormal. So wait, they're putting these together. Enterogastric reflux is a frequent incidental finding on HIDA scans. That's where they're scanning the gallbladder, and may have important implications for patients with suspected cholecystitis, gallbladder inflammation. Detecting EGR may reveal the true etiology, the cause of pain in patients with normal gallbladder ejection fraction on HIDA scans. For patients with abnormal gallbladder ejection fraction, EGR may be important since cholecystectomy, that's gallbladder removal, is a risk factor for development of clinically significant enterogastric reflux, and therefore may worsen pre-existing enterogastric reflux. They're just making it all worse because they don't admit what's causing it. Wasn't I a good boy doing all my research? Look how much research I got. Bile reflux gastritis. So they're talking about post-surgery here. Bile reflux gastritis is a disabling post-gastrectomy condition characterized by abdominal pain, bilious vomiting, and weight loss. The syndrome appears to be caused by free entero gut to stomach reflux of bile and other proximal small bowel constituents. Disabling. Vomiting up bile. I think that was all on that one. Let me just double check. Yep. This one, I don't want to go into this one. I'm just going to save some time on this one. Well, bile reflux gas. Let's do this one. Let me just show you. I'll just read at the bottom. It's going to be small. I'm sorry. Let me see what I can do to make it bigger. Oh, wait, wrong. Okay. I can't highlight this though. So they were talking about it's bile reflux gastritis. The commonest endoscopic, so they looked at it with a camera, alterations were erythema of the gastric mucosa, redness, the presence of bile into the stomach, thickens of the gastric fold. So the stomach is thickening because it's being damaged, kind of like a scar. Erosions, eating away at it. Gastric atrophy, the stomach is getting, like, think of a muscle. The stomach is a muscle. The stomach muscle is getting smaller. Petechiae, intestinal metaplasia, we're heading into cancer again, and gastric polyps, heading into cancer again. Acute inflammation, H. pylori infection, gastric polyps, and benign ulcerations were more frequent in patients with bile reflux gastritis after gastric surgery, while edema, swelling, and dysplasia were increased after biliary surgery. We're almost done. Hold on, I gotta shrink that. Okay. Oh, more bile salts in the esophagus of patients with esophagitis. Again, by sampling esophageal contents during ambulatory 24-hour pH monitoring, we found that in a group of 18 patients with esophagitis, all but one had detectable concentrations of bile salts in their esophagus. The concentrations of bile salts were low, however, and similar to those found in the gastric juice. That's the stomach. So we're talking about they have bile up in their esophagus. The amounts were similar to those found in the stomach juice of 10 normal controls. It is concluded that bile salts are present in the esophagus of patients with esophagitis and that their presence results from duodenogastric reflux. So, the normal people still had bile in their stomach. They just hadn't gotten heartburn yet or esophagitis. These things do progress. Like, these people could, it's like a siege, right? A siege, goes for a very long time and then it all ends at once. Or the saying I have, which is, my car worked just fine until it broke, right? So my car was working just fine in the stomach until it broke. And then all but one have it in their esophagus. You see what I'm saying? Something broke. Oh, you mean like maybe the lower esophageal sphincter getting paralyzed from bile and it's stuck open? There we go. Bile reflux gastropathy, prevalence and risk factors after therapeutic biliary bile duct interventions, a retrospective cohort study. So they're trying to help here, right? Therapeutic biliary interventions. These are medical interventions. This is going to be probably surgery. Bile reflux gastropathy is caused by the backward flow of duodenal fluid into the stomach. Okay, so we know that. Bile reflux gastropathy is common after therapeutic biliary interventions, being more among obese and diabetic patients. Toxic. They've already got bile problems. They go and they cut into their bile system, and then it leaks more and stuff is going all in the wrong directions. Hopefully that makes sense. This is the last one. Yay. Bile reflux and bile acids and the progression of gastric intestinal metaplasia. So now what I want you to take away from this, folks, is especially bile in your stomach and in your esophagus and in your throat, your larynx, causes inflammation first. It causes things to start growing second, and then it can turn into cancer. And the cancers may just shift areas. You take a proton pump inhibitor, omeprazole, whatever, the cancer spot may move to your bile ducts or your liver, but the process is still going on. Gastric intestinal metaplasia is a precancerous lesion of gastric cancer. Remember, stomach is gastric. And it's considered an irreversible point of progression for gastric cancer. They're saying like once you're past that point, even they're kind of like throwing up their hands. I got to tell you folks, if you want to come to like, I don't talk about cancer much. Cancer is a really, 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 really deep toxicity condition. Really deep. Like your body has had to make more storage areas because there's so much toxicity going on. Remember what I said earlier, the more toxic you are, the slower your detox. So now we have a body that is making even more areas to store toxins. So it's so full of toxins, how fast is their detox going to be? I'm not saying that it's not possible to help. I do think we can help, but the longer you put it, I'm gonna tell you, if you guys try to bring, let's say, your friends or your family or your parents to me after they've been through multiple rounds of chemo or radiation that has made them even more toxic, and you want me to throw a Hail Mary, like there is a point of no return, folks. There is absolutely, like, we total cars because we're like, we can't fix it. It's not worth fixing. Think about this. If somebody got so toxic and their detox got so slow that their own body could not even keep up with the normal waste products of living. So like day to day, we make waste products, just like your car makes exhaust. If we can't even detox the exhaust from normal running, there's no way we could expect to detox decades worth of poison. Okay? This is the reality. I'm not gonna like blow smoke up people's butts. You want to do this earlier rather than later. Don't watch me and then go, oh, well, maybe later when I feel like doing it. And then you get to the point of irreversible point of progression, also known as the point of no return, and then be like, oh, now I'll do it all. You can. I make no promises. Okay, H. pylori infection can cause gastrointestinal metaplasia, but we already know that the bile does it, and the bile is why the H. pylori comes, but its eradication does not reverse the process. Wait. So it causes it, but making it go away doesn't reverse the process. It must be something else then. Bile reflux is also a pathogenic factor in gastrointestinal metaplasia and can continuously irritate the gastric mucosa, putting toxins into it, accumulating toxins in it, and bile acids in reflux fluid have been widely reported to be associated with gastrointestinal metaplasia. This paper reviews in detail the relationship between bile reflux and gastrointestinal metaplasia and the mechanisms by which bile acids induce gastrointestinal metaplasia. So, that is that. Let me find my studio. Okay, Joe, you can take me down. So let's get into, were there any more super chats? So basically, I hope that shows the connections between all of these things, and especially how toxic bile theory is your GERD. Oh, I did that one, Joe. I did the super chat from Dylan about the lactoferrin. I did that one. Ramon, thank you for the super chat, Ramon. Ramon is a regular super chatter. He says, I still get that random and occasional heartburn when I consume a carbonated beverage like beer and sparkling water, and also when I drink apple cider vinegar. Don't know why. Okay, so let's go into this. First, Ramon, you got here late. Carbonated drinks are actually listed as one of the things that can trigger reflux symptoms. I'm just going to call it reflux symptoms now. I'm not going to use all the other terms because it's just reflux. It's just stuff coming back up. So carbonated water, carbonated water is acidic, right? Carbonic acid. The carbon dioxide in it turns into carbonic. Carbon dioxide turns into carbonic acid. It is acidic. So if you have any tendency towards, there's the bubbles which go up, right? The bubbles go up, and then you have all that carbonic acid in there. I was talking earlier about how I've tried, like, I wanted to like my soda stream. I wanted to like the mineral waters that were carbonated. And I just realized after I drank them longer and longer that I did not feel good on them. It's a very subtle thing. I did the same thing with rooibos tea before I knew about vitamin A. I was just drinking it, thought it was good for me. Oh, it's got lots of antioxidants and whatever. And no, I just slowly felt worse and worse. So carbonated water is known to trigger heartburn, probably due to the acidity. Beer, alcohol, well, you may want to go back and watch the rest of the episode, Ramon, because we talk about ALDH. We talk about alcohol. Alcohol turns into acetaldehyde. ALDH has to process it. When there's heartburn, reflux issues, there's a problem with ALDH and too many aldehydes. So alcohol is just adding aldehydes. That's all you're doing. So that's just not going to be good. So then what else was there on that one? Let me see. Oh, apple cider vinegar. Okay, so I'm going to go. Okay. We're going to get theoretical here. We're going to get theoretical because I don't have evidence on this. Okay, we're going to go over the apple cider vinegar cure and then how you're saying apple cider vinegar aggravates your heartburn. First of all, I have completely moved personally. My diet is cleaner than it's ever been before. And I have basically I just decided to move to just the 50-50 salt as my seasoning. Like, I'm not seasoning stuff with anything other than the 50-50 salt. I have gotten rid of all the vinegar-based sauces. I feel better. What is vinegar? Vinegar is acetic acid, also known in the research as acetate a lot of times. So how do we make vinegar in the body? Vinegar, well, it starts out as, there's sugars, but then those turn into ethanol, and then those turn into acetaldehyde, and that turns into acetic acid. Okay, so vinegar comes from sugar and alcohol and acetaldehyde. So to make the vinegar, so in vinegar, there's going to be acetaldehyde. It's going to be there. It's not going to all be gone. Just like in balsamic vinegar, in vinegar, the sugars are not all gone. So there's going to be a little bit of alcohol and a little bit of aldehyde and a little bit of acid. Kelsey was mentioning to me once, she's like, do you know how damaging, like what she called, the term is glacial acetic acid, like pure acetic acid. She's like, that stuff is horribly damaging. Glacial acetic acid. So they dilute the glacial acetic acid. Like if you wanted to make vinegar, right? It's 5% acidity. So to get it from 100% acidity down, if you had 100% acidity, to get it down to 5%, you'd have to dilute it 20 times. Okay. So apple cider vinegar, acetic acid, just vinegars in general. It went through, if we're talking about if it was made in a person, or probably made in the bacteria and yeast that make vinegar, when we're talking about apple cider vinegar, the yeast and other things that were on the outside of the apple skins, it's going through ALDH. So what happens when vitamin A goes through ALDH? Retinaldehyde goes through ALDH and it turns into retinoic acid. Retinoic acid, I've shown the research multiple times, retinoic acid itself inhibits ALDH. You following me so far? Retinaldehyde goes through ALDH, makes retinoic acid. Retinoic acid inhibits ALDH. We know we've talked a lot about ALDH inhibitors in bile. So could somebody, let's say the same thing is true. This is all theory. Like, I cannot find any research on this. This is just a theory based on the similar compounds and the similar pathways. So if you have acetaldehyde that goes through ALDH, that then turns into acetic acid, does acetic acid inhibit ALDH like retinoic acid does? I don't have any research on it. But could it? Yes. Now, inhibiting ALDH in the early phases, in the honeymoon phase, the duration paradox early phase, slowing down ALDH would generally reduce bile production in the beginning. Like I tell you, that bile is going to break through at some point. It's going to bust out. So over time, the apple cider vinegar cure would probably stop working, or it's just shifted it somewhere else, like with the omeprazole. Like, so think about it, the proton pump inhibitors, they might stop you from getting stomach cancer or esophageal cancer because it's not putting bile up there anymore. But then you saw more liver and bile duct cancer. So it just shifted the area. This is the biggest thing that people can't understand. They'll be like, oh, I fixed this condition. And you're like, no, you just moved it to another spot. You didn't fix anything. You just shifted the chemistry. And so you found a new weak point. And now this weak point isn't being exploited, so that it goes away there and it shows up here. People cannot handle that idea. They think everything's different. Like it's all just distinct problems. No, it's absolutely all connected, and you can shift it all around. Like, could somebody, let's say somebody, I'm just throwing this out there, somebody goes on a vegan diet and their cancer goes away. Well, they were probably starving themselves of protein, and their body said, well, we're going to go eat this because we're desperate. We need protein. We're going to go eat this lump of stuff here, even if it may free up a bunch of toxins in their system. And then what we see long-term in vegans is we see them get very underweight. And underweight and the liver is not a good sign. That's like worse than being overweight with a bad liver. Underweight, chronically underweight with a bad liver is worse than being overweight with a bad liver. So they can change their disease state. You can change a disease state. You could have heartburn, take tons and tons of baking soda and over-alkalize yourself. And you're like, the heartburn's gone. I finally fixed it. And then you create other problems, like the people I know who did long-term the acid alkaline diet. And they said as they got more and more alkaline, as they were better and better and better on the diet, they got worse and worse health. And then eventually their teeth were falling out. Oh, but their original disease was gone. I don't care. Like, okay, that's nice. You changed the disease state. That's all you did. So, but so apple cider vinegar long-term could aggravate stuff. It's also acidic, right? So you're finding that you put carbonated water down there, that's acidic. You put apple cider vinegar down there, that's acidic. You get more heartburn. So you probably have, that mixed type of heartburn. So you may have gotten rid of a lot of it with what you're doing, but it's still just kind of like under the surface. You haven't gotten far enough yet that you could have those things and not have it flare up. You just got to get further, and stopping alcohol would be a good idea, just in general. But yeah, vinegar. I'm not gonna rail against vinegar because that could be too far for a lot of people. But I'm gonna say that if you're okay with not eating vinegar, I think not eating vinegar is better for you than eating it. I'll put it that way. I don't think vinegar gives any benefits. The apple cider vinegar cures are all temporary, mostly symptomatic. So that's that. Any other super chats, Joe? How many people we got here? 78 people. Awesome. Oh, let me answer. I'll take Chris's question real quick. Let me see, what time are we at? Oh, I gotta go in. I should go in like 5 minutes. So Chris's question, starting at the very top of the questions. What is it about bile dumping that makes you tired/sleepy? I've noticed myself yawning and wanting to lay down on the couch for a couple minutes after a good poo. Thanks, Doc. Okay. So maybe it was just an epic poop and you were just like so tired. Sorry. It's just epic, bro. It was so big. No, some people with bile dumps get sleepy, tired. Some people get kind of anxious and agitated. whatever you're getting from your bile dump. I mean, a lot of times people feel better after they poop, right? Because that enterohepatic circulation that was happening, even while you were forming the poop, you pooped that out. So whatever was recirculating that was associated with that poop is now gone. So it can't recirculate anymore. So you feel better. But the getting tired when you know you have a bile dump. So a bile dump, pooping is related to enough bile being dumped, but usually the bile dump happens well before you poop. So, and usually then pooping relieves it at least partially. So yeah, but some people get like it's all about the recipe of your bile. Whatever's in your bile recipe could be more you have to think of it's like a balance. It's like a recipe. It's like you might have something that's savory, or you might have something that's sweet. You might have something that makes you sleepy in your bile. You might have something that kind of is like agitating or stimulating, like a lot of copper. And so depending upon that recipe is going to be the result you get out of it. So that's about the best I can give you on that. So, but yeah, once you know it, like I've never been a tired person, like in terms of like when I have my bile dumps. No, I can't sleep when I have my bile dumps. So I'm totally the opposite. And that's where people, conventional medicine, they want it to be like, oh, Dr. Smith says there's a bile dump. What are the symptoms of that? And I'm like, potentially anything you currently have, could be potentially problems you've had in the past. And if you force yourself to dump enough bile into the system and you find new weak links because you tried to push the program too fast, you might find new symptoms. What saying goes along with this? This is not a game. So kind of like with Dylan's question, can I just push through it? This is not a game. You could hurt yourself pushing too hard. I mean, people might think they're in a really bad state and they go to the hospital and the hospital's like, it's not that big a deal. You go home, you're fine, whatever. And they talk to me and I'm like, stop the lactoferrin. And then a week later, they're like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. All the problems are gone. And I'm like, yeah, that's why in the articles I say, start really slow. And if you start feeling bad from it, you need to reduce your dose by half or even take a break. Same thing with the niacin. People can push the niacin too hard and dump too much bile. Don't cause yourself new issues just because you want to be macho and finish quicker. Remember, you're here because you have a toxic bile leakage problem. That is the root of your problems. And if you decide to push that harder and push more bile leaking into your system because you're trying to detox too fast, that is your fault. That is not the program's fault. That is not my fault. Most people who are in the chat already know this. They've already done it to themselves. We've all done it to ourselves. We've all done it to ourselves probably multiple times. If you know what I'm talking about, you've done it multiple times. You get greedy, you get impatient. You think, oh, I can handle this stuff. Or you think, oh, well, I could handle this much 5 years ago when you were more toxic. Well, as you become less toxic, you don't need as much of things to get things moving because your system's cleaner. Don't we want to be efficient? Like we want to have to use less stuff. That's the goal, right? So if you're getting to the point where you can use less stuff, use less stuff. I would love for everybody to never have to use supplements after a certain point. Like their minerals are filled. They don't need, lactoferrin anymore. They don't need niacin anymore. But think about the world we live in. Is that going away anytime soon? Are they going to start making all the, or are they going to start helping the farmers to grow the best food possible with the most nutrients in it? Or are they going to continue funding the pharma cartel and spray more crap on your food and not worry about the nutrient content of it? As long as they can put an apple on the shelf at the store, as long as there's an apple there, they don't care about what's in it. Just as long as you can buy an apple, right? Same thing with meat. They don't care about the nutrition in it. They only care that you can buy a piece of meat. So they only care about the absolute minimum to put the food there in the store. Okay. So Bilo is saying niacin and heartburn trouble me, Garrett. Troubles me a lot. Okay, so well, heartburn. Oh, let me just go over a couple more things you can do. Like I mentioned earlier, usually reflux, heartburn is going to be responsive, at least symptom-wise, to either charcoal or some sort of alkalizing thing like bicarbonate. Could be potassium bicarbonate, could be sodium bicarbonate, could be magnesium carbonate. Any of the buffers that we use for the niacin could potentially be helpful. Now, other things you can do with there's been a lot of chat in the Love Your Liver network about incline beds. If you elevate your head above your stomach, gravity will tend to keep the reflux more down in your stomach and less up in your throat. It's just gravity, right? It's just fluid dynamics, right? It's just gravity pulling on fluids and keeping them down in your stomach. So, inclined bed, you can get things to put on your bed. You can get little stands to hold up the head and feet of your bed. You could do extra pillows. Like I remember in medical school, the heart doctor told me, he's like, always ask them how many pillows they sleep with, because that'll tell you if they have heartburn or not. Like if you have 2 or 3 pillows propping you up, you got heartburn. So that's a cheap and easy thing to reduce symptoms. So most types of reflux is going to react either positively to charcoal soaking up the bile, or some sort of bicarb or alkalizing agent or magnesium carbonate to help alkalize the acidity. Like we talked about, bile plus acid is the worst. So that's why working on the acid would give those people relief, but it's still caused by the bile. So, but niacin, we've been over this before. Niacin increases bile production. Niacin is needed for ALDH to run. So if you start making ALDH run better, you're probably going to start making more bile. So if you start making more bile, and just like with the lactoferrin, if you haven't healed that part yet, and that bile is still going back up into your stomach, and you take too much niacin, it can aggravate your heartburn. Absolutely. And buffering and if you were going to buffer the niacin, somebody who had, let's say they knew they respond well to bicarbonates or something, they might want to over buffer their nicotinic acid, their niacin, to get more of an effect on the stomach acid. But that's all talked about in the Love Your Liver articles. So, let's see. Oh, KW, thank you for your post here. We have, didn't know I had silent reflux until I went to the emergency room with exploding gallbladder and pancreatitis and got EG scope. So thankful I found the Love Your Liver program. Been so much better since March. I feel so good. Exploding gallbladder. I mean, God. So again, folks, all that we just went over here, like it's a bile problem. This person, KW, had a bile problem. Showed up in their gallbladder, showed up in their pancreas. They had silent reflux. 3 months on the program, they're feeling good. Did we give them a protocol for their gallbladder? Did we give them a protocol for their pancreas? Did we give them a protocol for their silent reflux? No, I actually don't know who this person is, and I don't mean that in a bad way. They're doing the do-it-yourself Love Your Liver program and getting better from multiple conditions, because these are all connected to the bile. And that's all you need to know. Kind of amped up today, which is kind of funny. I have a story about that sometime, but so KW said I had a cough at night only, thought it was just nasal drainage. Nope, silent reflux. Yeah, those coughs, those are stinky. Robbie asks, I'm 77 and take HCl. I'm assuming you mean betaine HCl. Is this okay or not? Betaine HCl, if it helps, take it. If you need it, it means there's a deeper problem. If it doesn't help you, don't take it. If it makes you feel worse, don't take it. But betaine HCl in our framework would be basically a crutch, a Band-Aid. And so we talked about HCl, right? If you need more stomach acid, it's probably because you've got bile going into your stomach, which is alkaline, and it's alkalizing your stomach acid, so you're not digesting properly. So again, yes, taking the betaine HCl may help increase the acidity of your stomach. Yes. And the deeper problem is the bile, which is probably what is making your stomach too alkaline and possibly weakening that lower esophageal sphincter, which is letting the bile come up into your throat. So that's what we got that. Yeah, Laura said, my chiropractor in New York fixed my hiatal hernia years ago. He said it doesn't always work, but it worked for me. That's great, Laura. I'm really glad. There's all those books on hiatal hernias on the internet where, you know, you drink a big glass of water in the morning and you jump as hard as you can and you land on your heels as hard as you can, trying to like put the water in your stomach and yank it down, or the chiropractors do those adjustments. I'm not against those. The worst case of reflux I've ever dealt with, gentlemen, he started with me. He's been with me like 12 years, I think now. He lives here in Tucson, back when I still had an office and I wasn't doing all virtual stuff. Worst, I mean, even water gave this guy reflux. I tried so many things with this guy. This was back in my early days of being like I think he started with me like the first year I started taking naturopathic patients. I tried everything. I actually got to the point. This is how honest I am. I got to the point where I was with him and I said, dude, I have nothing left. I have no more tools. I don't know what else to do. So I said, if you want to go see somebody else, I totally understand. Like I got nothing. I got nothing left. I don't know what else to do. And he told me, that he wanted to stick with me. He was willing to stick with me until I figured it out, because I was the only doctor who listened to him. And I didn't make him feel like he was crazy or he was making it up or he was exaggerating or any of that stuff, because I don't have any reason to not believe clients. Like if you want to come to me and lie, I mean, you can. It's not hurting me. If you want to tell me you're better when you're not, you're hurting yourself. If you want to exaggerate things, you're making it look worse. So then people are going to do more things, and more things in health I don't think adding more and more and more things is necessarily the answer always either. So he said he was going to stick with me. CEW is just a super chat donation. Well, thank you very much. I didn't see a question there, Joe. So, there it is. He says, Dr. Smith now reads minds. I was literally going to ask him to do another episode on this. Well, yeah. Well, we're here. We're here now. We're doing it. This was a big deal. Like I woke up real early this morning to do this. Okay. He said he just did a super chat. Didn't realize he needed to type the message because he didn't see it with yellow on yellow. Yeah, you're okay. But thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, this show has been a while in the making. I meant to do it last week. Finally got it done this week. I am going into like the busiest. I'm in the middle of the busiest 2 weeks of my career. So getting this done, this is a big show. That's a big thing. Well, I'll just say it here. I'm going to be a guest on, well, this week, Kelsey and I are going to get the Methylene Blue show done. At least that's the plan. And both Kelsey and I have been working on the research for that. And it is gigantic. If you don't know what Methylene Blue is, thank the Lord, because it is just toxic pharma cartel garbage that is being sold to people as a brain drug. And it's toxic. It's absolutely toxic. People are going to pay a very strong price for using that, for believing these like 20-something influencers who are paid to shill this stuff. They're paying pennies for the bottle that they sell to you. And it is the most potent inhibitor of enzymes and detox pathways in the body I have ever seen. And we have research on all of it. Of course we do. That's what we do. So yeah, it's going to be, I'm hoping to put, if you Methylene Blue people out there, I am hoping to put a giant dent in your income. That is my goal. Selling a toxic textile dye to people to take for brain drug. My goodness. Y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. Imagine if somebody's one tool was having people take a dye. Like, ooh, I'm a health guru. Take this toxic fluorescent dye. It probably won't cause problems. We're never going to tell you about all the bad research on it and how poison control says don't take this stuff. Jeez. So, but the adjustments with the hiatal hernia. Yeah, sometimes it could work. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, you know, how many people go to chiropractors over and over and over for pain and it never goes away. And then somebody goes in and they get one adjustment and they're like, oh, my problem's gone forever, right? Chiropractors love that. That's like their home run. And I'm nothing against chiropractors. But if I was a chiropractor and I do one of those, you know, it's like, whoo, awesome. And then there's the people who come in week after week after week. And I'd be thinking, why isn't it holding? Why isn't it sticking? Why am I not dealing with the root cause? That's why I'm here doing this, is because I've always had this drive to find the root cause. And I always believed, this sounds weird, I always believed there was like one root cause to everything. I've had that belief for a long time. And I went through the toxic metals phase, and I went through the candida phase, and I went through the probiotics, the gut biome phase, and I went through all these phases, like the vitamin D will fix everything phase. Oh, goodness gracious. I went through the mineral balancing phase of hair testing. I still use hair testing. Hair testing is great, but the way it's taught out there is complete garbage. And the goals that people have, and people looking at ratios, like ratios are the be-all end-all. Ratios are mostly a waste of time once you know how to read the test. Can't change a ratio directly. You can only change a ratio by changing the levels that make it up. So why even bother looking at the ratios when you know where you want the mineral levels to be? And yes, I'm plenty good in math. I can understand what ratios are. Ratios show symptoms. Ratios are symptomatic. So it's funny that the people in the hair analysis world are looking at ratios, which are an expression of how the levels affect people. But you can't fix a ratio. So if you go, this ratio, your calcium to potassium ratio means your thyroid's not functioning good. And then you go, okay, what do we fix then? Well, you fix the calcium and you fix the potassium. Like, that's what you fix. You don't fix the calcium to potassium ratio. Okay. Hope said, when I had what I think was an ulcer, I needed the nicotinic acid buffers, the bicarbonates and the carbonate, and activated charcoal to help it. Eventually, I got to where just activated charcoal helped. Well, isn't she kind of explaining she had mixed reflux, acid, and bile? She did charcoal and the bicarbonates, the buffers. And then eventually, as she was fixing the problem, she didn't need the extra buffers anymore. And it was just charcoal. And we're just down to the bile. Amazing how all these things prove themselves in the real world. Actually, you know what I can go do? I'm going to go get my post on pork that I did just today. Where is it? Oh, those must be reposts. Come on, I'll find it in just one second. There it is. So I'll give you guys all these links if you want to read them, but I'm really just going to go through the tweet. So Joe, you can show this. Pigs/pork are absolutely full of toxic vitamin A. I don't care what the USDA charts say. The USDA charts only show retinol. Keep that in mind. Pig liver is the highest out there in terms of toxic vitamin A. Quoting the paper, the values found in individual studies vary considerably, but the highest vitamin A content in the liver is usually reported in pigs. 5 references. This is an article of mine on my old research forum. I'll put that link in there. Actually, I'll put my tweet link in there too. Lard factor is a synonym for vitamin A, as in retinol. So there is something that they found They found vitamin A activity enough in lard. They were still figuring out what vitamin A was, but they said, we're going to call this lard factor, and it seems to do everything related to vitamin A. I've been over this before. I'll just go and show you all the titles of the studies. Oh, we didn't go over how lard intake induces thyroid dysfunction. Gosh, it couldn't be the vitamin A, could it? More lard damaging thyroid function. Yeah, lard is bad. Worse than soybean oil. So here, let's just read these titles again. An unknown factor with vitamin A activity distilled from lard. Relation of vitamin A and lard factor to disease caused by rancid lard. Oh, you mean oxidized vitamin A turning into retinaldehyde and retinoic acid? Oh, that would be worse. Studies in vitamin A, 26. The vitamin A replacing effect of lard. Nature of the vitamin A-like factor in lard. Vitamin A activity of lard. Identification of the so-called lard factor as vitamin A. In the NIH PubChem Open Chemistry Database for retinol. Synonyms for retinol. Lard factor. Okay? There's plenty. Did I not show that on my screen? Well, whatever. It's this article. Let me go up here. Pork/lard is inherently unhealthy and contains lard factor, a form of poison/vitamin A activity. That's what I used to call it. Now I just call it vitamin A, and I disrespect it by always making it lowercase, even if it's at the start of a sentence, because I will not give it a capital at vitamin. So anyway, there's that post. Did I put that in there? Now let me put this in there. So then let me continue. Okay. So when people say that there's zero measured retinol in pork meat, that absolutely does not eliminate the likelihood of retinaldehyde and retinoic acids in that meat. I am not touching that stuff. Here is something you guys can verify this in the chat or in the comments later. As people detox longer and get less toxic, their previous taste for pork absolutely turns to disgust as their bodies recognize toxins better. This has been observed many times. Caveat emptor, buyer beware. Don't eat filthy animals. And I did put the little scene from Pulp Fiction GIF with the, pigs are filthy animal. So anyway, Joe, you can take that down now. It was also in this paper. I did make another tweet on this paper today about how they were talking about vitamin A toxicity from foods like dairy and eggs and liver and pork. Amazing. How could they do that? There's no vitamin A in pork. Okay. So let's see. Okay. Actually, I think we're done. I went over as usual. I got to get to the inner circle right now. We're at my private Q&A group. They've been waiting very patiently for me. I knew this was going to be long. I didn't ask for a lot of super chats because I knew this was going to be long. So if you want to find more information from me, first of all, watch episodes 53 and 71 on toxic bile theory. If you're wondering what the heck I'm talking about, go and watch that. That's where you start. Then if you want to watch the other, you can look through all the other live streams and see the other disease conditions that I've done. Basically the exact same thing I did here, showing its connection to toxic bile theory, aldehydes, nutrient deficiencies, toxicities, the gut biome thing. I do this with like every disease that I can. And sometimes I take requests, like the reflux episode. This one was a request from multiple people. And so I finally got around to it. I knew it was going to be big. It's one of those things where you go, oh, this is going to be a big one. I don't know if I want to do this right away. And here it is. So I feel good about it. So we'll have the methylene blue episode coming up. What else was going on? Oh, well, this week I have to prepare. I am going out of town next week, but the methylene blue episode, just so you know, the methylene blue episode will be the stand-in for the live stream. So we're going to pre-record it but we're going to play it at the normal live stream time. So there's not, you can do the live chat. Kelsey and I will probably be in the live chat to respond and answer questions when we air it at the same time as the live stream next week. That's when it'll air first. So they'll have what do they call it? The watch parties or whatever. I don't know. That'll be our first one. So we'll do that. I go to be on Alec Zek's podcast next week. I don't know when that will come out after that. And then I speak at the Natural Law Institute convention on Friday up in Bellevue. So that'll be exciting. Those of you who are up in the Pacific Northwest, if you want to come swing over there, I'll be there. So anyway, yeah, it's very busy 2 weeks. So things are going well. And we've had some interesting things happen in the network with other people lately. The work is, just to let you guys know, the work is growing, and we are attracting the attention of people who do not like us, which is good. It means we're growing. So anyway, hope you all enjoyed it. All the links are down below. Leave a comment, subscribe, leave a chat. But just know that the best thing you can do for YouTube in terms of YouTube promoting this is more watch time. That's what YouTube likes. It's a video channel. They like watch time. So the more you watch on here, the better we do. Okay? So we'll see you all next time. Bye now.